Chapter 351. Suhang City was a 5,000-year-old ancient capital. It had undergone the baptism of time and experienced countless disasters, but it still remained intact to this day. However, rumors were spreading all over Suhang City. The entire city was in a state of panic, and large numbers of citizens were fleeing out of the city using various means of transportation. The reason was simple. Just yesterday, Yang Jian had destroyed a city, and this city was only 3,000 kilometers away from Suhang City. Although mortals were weak, it did not mean that they lacked intelligence. They could completely imagine that the next city to be destroyed by Yang Jian would be Suhang City, where they had lived for generations. Landscape Manor. Fatso Huang, Gu Beichen, the 36 personal guards of the Grim Reaper, and of course, many former members of the Mansion of the Dead. They were all gathered in the courtyard, their faces pale. They had waited for Yi Xian for 70 years, but they did not know where Yi Xian had gone. Yi Xian was elusive. Even if he had disappeared for 70 years, no one was surprised. After all, such things had happened several times before Yi Xian had become an immortal. However, the danger this time was too serious. An immortal who could destroy the world, was really something they could not resist. They did not even have the courage to confront Yang Jian. This was because Fatso Huang and the others knew that if they appeared in front of Yang Jian would definitely not kill them. Instead, he would torture them to force Yi Xian to appear in front of him. Although Fatso Huang and the others had great confidence in Yi Xian, they did not know if Yi Xian was a match for Yang Jian. During this period of time, they had all hidden in Landscape Manor, hoping that Yi Xian would hear the news and quickly come to find them. At the same time, one in the south and one in the north. From the south, Yang Jian stepped into the sky, while from the north, Yi Xian strolled through the sky. Perhaps he had a feeling that the two of them were going to engage in an earth-shattering battle, and this battle was going to be a life-and-death battle. The sky was clear and blue for thousands of miles. Yi Xian's golden cloud covered the sky, and he was heading towards Suhang City at a moderate pace. This was because he knew that Fatso Huang and the others were waiting for him in Landscape Manor. This time, he was going to take Fatso Huang and the others to the Earth Immortal realm. However, wherever Yi Xian passed, he saw thousands of miles of land scorched and dozens of cities destroyed. This made him frown slightly as he constantly sensed the aura of the human world. Yang Jian. Suddenly, Yang Jian's aura was sensed by Yi Xian. This caused Yi Xian's eyes to freeze, and even the aura around his body became somewhat chaotic. Yi Xian reacted this way not because he was afraid of Yang Jian, but because he did not expect Yang Jian to appear in the human world. It was obvious that Yang Jian had come for him. The human world was Yi Xian's foundation. It was also his old home and his greatest secret. All living beings in the Earth Immortal realm believed that he was the reincarnation of Daluo Jingxian. That was why his origin was not recorded in the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man. Yi Xian did not know how Yang Jian had found him and came to the human world. However, Yi Xian did not have to guess. This must be Yuan Ling's scheme because only Yuan Ling knew that he came from the human world. Yang Jian, you really have a death wish. Yi Xian's eyes were cold and sharp. A sinister smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The murderous intent in his eyes was so dense that it was almost tangible. Boom! Yi Xian did not hold back anymore. The aura that he had been hiding burst out, shaking the sky. His entire body tore through the endless void and surged towards Yang Jian. What a joke! Yi Xian was not afraid of Yang Jian when he was a primordial Unity Xian immortal. Now that he had reached the early stage of the All-Heaven Golden Immortal Realm, Yi Xian was not afraid of him. Since Yang Jian dared to chase him to the human world, then he, Yi Xian, might as well let this trash die without a burial ground. At the same time, in the sky above Suhang City, Yang Jian held the 3-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand. The golden light of all heaven rippled around him. The surrounding space seemed to be distorted because of Yang Jian's existence, causing the people of Suhang City below to tremble in fear. What should we do? What should we do now? Are we all going to die today? Damn it! When the entire Suang city was covered by the golden light of all heaven, no one could escape alive. This made a large number of people cry out in despair. In the mountain manor, Fatso Huang and the others were pale. However, there was no fear in their eyes. They looked at the sky because they always believed that Yi Xian would appear. Above the sky, in the void, Yang Jian was awe-inspiring. He suddenly looked to the north. When he opened and closed his eyes, a cold light flashed and a cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Little brat Yi Xian, you've finally appeared. As a greeting gift for you, let Suhang City accompany you in death. Slash! Yang Jian sneered cruelly and cast a powerful spell. The golden light of all heaven rippled in the sky and turned into 9 golden heavenly dragons. With earth-shattering dragon roars, the dragons violently dashed toward the entire city of Suhang to destroy it. I don't want to die. Who can save us? You beast! Cries, curses, and cries of despair rang out incessantly. Under Yang Jian's destructive immortal spells, the people of Suhang City cried out in all sorts of voices. Unfortunately, they were only mortals. They could not resist Yang Jian, an all-heaven golden immortal. Sir! Suddenly, Fatso Huang threw his head back and roared when Suang City was about to be turned into a wreckage. His pale face flushed with excitement. How dare you make a fool of yourself with such childish tricks? When Yi Xian's voice echoed in all directions, the 9 golden dragons transformed into specks of golden light that drifted away with the wind. Hum! The sky shook and the earth trembled. Yi Xian crossed the sky and arrived. His sword finger was like the heavenly river, and his body was like the universe. When he pointed out, the entire world began to distort and shatter. That extremely terrifying power was like a falling star as it smashed towards Yang Jian. Clang! Yang Jian's expression changed slightly. He held his 3-pointed, double-edged saber horizontally in his hand and barely blocked Yi Xian's immortal technique. He was pushed back 1,000 miles by the terrifying force. The wind between heaven and earth swept through the sky like the roar of a ferocious beast. It was as if the water of the 9 heavens was flowing backward. Yi Xian stood in the sky with his hands behind his back. However, the all-heaven golden light that bloomed from his body illuminated all directions. He was like a fog, like an illusion, like an immortal, like a god. He was invincible since ancient times. Who could stand against him in all directions? That was Yi Xian's boldness and his contempt. He did not dare to say that he could overlook the 9 heavens from the earth immortal realm, but the mortal realm was his ancestral land. He was the only immortal in the world, and Yang Jian was nothing to him. Sir! Divine! Divine King Yi! Divine King Yi has appeared! In Suang City, Fatso Huang and the others cheered. The people of Suang City, who were waiting for death with their eyes closed, opened their eyes. When they saw Yi Xian in the sky, everyone cheered. Chapter 352. In the void thousands of miles above the vault of heaven, Yi Xian and Yang Jian stood opposite each other in the air. A murderous aura reverberated in all directions. The endless sky gradually darkened at this moment, and tens of thousands of bolts of lightning flickered within it. At this moment, Yang Jian's face was solemn, and his brows were slightly furrowed. There was a hint of fear and shock in his eyes as he looked at Yi Xian. Yang Jian did not expect that Yi Xian, who was only a primordial unity Xian celestial, would ascend to the all-heaven golden immortal realm in just 600 years. Was this a joke? An all-heaven golden immortal? Yang Jian felt as if he had swallowed a fly. His mind was fluctuating violently, and he could not believe his eyes. Primordial unity Xian celestial, primordial unity golden immortal, all-heaven Xian celestial, and all-heaven golden immortal were 3 realms apart. The 3 realms did not seem like much, but Yang Jian knew that even for someone with unparalleled talent like him, it took him 300,000 years to cultivate from a primordial unity Xian celestial to an all-heaven golden immortal. 300,000 years. What kind of concept was that? Yang Jian, who had unparalleled talent, was able to ascend to the all-heaven golden immortal realm in 300,000 years. That was why he was called the first person of the third generation of the clan of enlightenment in the three realms. But what did he see today? A mere 600 years was only the time he spent in seclusion. However, this Yi Xian actually transformed into an all-heaven golden immortal. This was simply unimaginable to him. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Yang Jian would have thought that it was simply a fantasy. Fear, horror, and a sense of oppression that he had never felt before attacked Yang Jian's mind at this moment. He was afraid, but he was also glad. He was afraid that if Yi Xian stepped into the Daluo Jingxian in another 10,000 years, he would die without a burial place. He was glad that he had made the decision to come to the human world to look for and kill Yi Xian. Although Yi Xian had become an all-heaven golden immortal, he was only in the early stage. With his late-stage all-heaven golden immortal cultivation, he would definitely be able to kill Yi Xian here and nip him in the bud. Yi Xian, I have to admit that I'm known as a cultivation genius, but compared to you, I'm not worth mentioning. What a pity. Even though you're an unparalleled monster and your cultivation speed can be said to be unprecedented, you're still going to die in my hands today. Yang Jian's eyes were cold as killing intent swirled around his body. He looked at Yi Xian with killing intent in his eyes. Buzz. Immortal light split the sky and distorted space. Yang Jian held a three-pointed, double-edged blade in his hand as he sliced through the sky, pointing it at Yi Xian from afar. He finally viewed Yi Xian as his greatest enemy in his life, and the immortal energy within his body was circulated to the peak. The wind was gentle, and the clouds were clear. Yi Xian put his hands behind his back, and celestial light surrounded him. He said coldly, Yang Jian, in my eyes, you're just a good-for-nothing. If you had behaved yourself in the earth immortal world, you might have been able to live a little longer. Unfortunately, you came to the human world to seek death. Today, I'll destroy your spirit and you'll never be reincarnated. You think you can kill me? Yang Jian laughed coldly. The all-heaven golden light around him rippled, and the void collapsed. Time and space seemed to be in chaos. The cracks in the world proved that Yang Jian had condensed a killing technique and was ready to fight with Yi Xian. Heavenly 36 transformations. Roar! Yang Jian roared at the sky. The all-heaven golden light covered the sky and the earth. His body grew rapidly until he became 1,000,000 feet tall. The three-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand danced in the sky, shattering the world within thousands of miles. Freeze! With a single word, the world froze. Yi Xian's palm brushed through the air, and the same golden light of Luo Tian whistled out, freezing the shattered world and allowing Suhang City to be preserved. Yi Xian knew that if the two of them fought, Suang City would definitely collapse. Fatso Huang and the others were in Suang City. This was not an outcome he wanted to see. Heavenly 36 transformations? Yi Xian smiled contemptuously. He withdrew his palms slightly, and the celestial light around him spread out. His voice echoed in the entire human world. Change. It was a simple word, but it exploded the sky and shattered the mountains and rivers. The Heavenly 36 transformations was a Taoist grand magic. Although it was Yang Jian's signature move, Yi Xian had already mastered this technique, so he could use it at this moment. Rumble. Yi Xian's body was like a divine mountain, and his breathing was like the wind and clouds. Yi Xian's body was also expanding until it was 300,000 meters tall. He stood tall in the mortal world, and the terrifying golden light of Luo Tian spread out for millions of kilometers. Its terrifying power was unimaginable. It was the same grand magic and the same immortal magic. When the two giants appeared in the sky, the entire human world rumbled and shook as if it could not bear the burden. At the same time, the heavenly eyes satellites all over the world broadcast this scene to the world. Every human was staring at the live broadcast because everyone knew that this battle would determine the future of the human world. If Yi Xian won, the human world would exist. If Yi Xian died, the human world would die. Kill! The three-pointed double-edged blades danced in the sky, tearing apart the void and slashing toward Yi Xian with 1,000,000 feet of blade light. Die! Yi Xian was unbridled. His two fists pierced through the galaxy and seemed to break the universe. They carried boundless terrifying power and blasted toward Yang Jian. Rumble. When the two supreme forces collided, the world within a radius of millions of miles was destroyed. The ground collapsed violently, and the mountains and rivers exploded into dust. Lava gushed out from the broken ground, causing the world within a radius of millions of miles to sink into a boundless sea of fire. At this time, Suhang's city was covered by Yi Xian's immortal light. Although it had avoided disaster, it was still in great danger when it fell into the boundless sea of magma. Star plucking. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He turned his fist into a palm. When he waved his hand in the void, a meteorite in the luminous sky was sucked toward him. With his all-heaven golden immortal cultivation, the meteorite violently smashed toward Yang Jian. At the same time, Yi Xian took advantage of this gap and slapped a beam of immortal light toward Suhang city. His voice also resounded in all directions. Move the mountain. Rumble. The void shook and the world buzzed. An extremely shocking thing happened. Suhang city, which covered an area of 100,000 miles, rose from the ground. Under the cover of Yi Xian's immortal light, it turned into a golden meteor and surged into the distance. Plucking the stars with one hand and moving the mountains and rivers with the other was the ability of an all-heaven golden immortal. This also proved how powerful an all-heaven golden immortal was. When this scene appeared before the eyes of the world, it simply subverted their imagination of immortals. It also made the world realize what kind of existence immortals were. Bang! The sky collapsed and reformed again. The meteorite that was smashing toward Yang Jian was split in half by his saber. His face was ferocious and cruel. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Yi Xian. His three-pointed, double-edged saber, which carried the power to kill gods and immortals, slashed toward the space between Yang Jian's eyebrows. Clang! Yi Xian coldly smiled as he punched out, causing the heavens to collapse and the earth to shatter. He directly blasted the three-pointed, double-edged blade in Yang Jian's hand, flying. His entire body took a step forward, and two fist lights that seemed to fill the sky violently smashed towards Yang Jian. Bang! Bang! Chaotic stars shattered the sky and heaven and earth fell silent. In the face of Yi Xian's incomparably violent attacks, Yang Jian's palms transformed into boundless immortal light and he completely engaged in battle with Yi Xian. Too slow, too slow. Yang Jian, you're too slow. Yi Xian roared ferociously. His fists were like stars in the sky and violently greeted Yang Jian's body. Yang Jian struggled to resist, but his speed could not keep up with Yi Xian's terrifying attacks. This caused him to constantly suffer from Yi Xian's punches and he was gradually losing ground. However, the battle was not over yet. The real battle of life and death was about to begin. Both of them had been testing each other in the previous battle. They both wanted to kill each other with one blow and not give each other a chance to catch their breath. When Yang Jian found out that Yi Xian was using him to refine his cultivation, he could not hold back anymore. He wanted to use his greatest trump card to fight Yi Xian one last time. The sky froze, the space surged, and the magma on the ground drifted for millions of miles. The world was filled with the smell of smoke. The rolling black smoke covered the sky, and only two golden lights bloomed in the sky, unaffected by this scene of destruction. As if sensing something, the two of them gradually returned to normal. They faced each other in the endless sky. However, heaven and earth were stagnant as if everything was about to wither at this moment. Rumble. The wind blew. This was the astral wind of heaven and earth. Thunder roared. This was the divine thunder of the ninth heaven. Yang Jian was no longer roaring. He had become extremely calm. However, his body was gradually becoming illusory. It was as if he had turned into a terrifying black hole that was going to devour everything in the world. Yi Xian frowned slightly. His expression gradually became serious. He knew Yang Jian very well. He knew that Yang Jian could be called the war god of 3 realms because of his gifted divine powers. This was also his greatest trump card. There was a legend about Yang Jian in the Earth Immortal world. Yang Jian could be called the most powerful person after Daluo Jingxian, not because his cultivation was invincible in the same realm, but because his gifted divine powers were too terrifying. Even Daluo Jingxian did not dare to take them head-on. The Dharma Eye of Heaven and Earth and the Destructive Divine Light. These were Yang Jian's greatest trump cards. His third vertical eye was bestowed by the Heavenly Tao. It had incredible power. Yi Xian had tried it once. It was also at that time that he was severely injured. If it were not for the protection of the heaven-destroying halberd, he might have died under Yang Jian's Dharma Eye of Heaven and Earth. At that time, Yang Jian was severely injured. Now, his cultivation was not damaged at all. He was at his peak. Therefore, if he used the Dharma Eye of Heaven and Earth, it would be even more terrifying than 600 years ago. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, Yang Jian said calmly. Yang Jian said calmly. Towering immortal light connected heaven and earth. The boundless firmament rumbled and shook. The third vertical eye at the center of his brows opened slightly. In the boundless firmament, a terrifying Dharma Eye of Heaven and Earth was condensing. The sky was vast and the divine light lingered. Yang Jian looked calmly at Yi Xian and said in a low voice, "Yi Xian, I actually admire you." It was not easy for a mere native of the land of exile to come this far. If you were given another 10,000 years, I would not be surprised even if you became the Daluo Jingxian who transcended heaven and earth and did not belong to the 5 elements. If you and I had not become enemies in the past, perhaps we could still be friends. Unfortunately, you will be buried in this world today. Yang Jian stood proudly in the sky. His voice was very calm and the divine light around him rippled slightly. It was as if he was talking about something very ordinary. However, the gaze he looked at Yi Xian with gradually turned cold and emotionless. Looking at Yang Jian's proud and indifferent attitude, Yi Xian laughed. He really laughed, but his laughter was very contemptuous. It was as if he had heard a very funny joke. If I were you, I would not talk so much nonsense. All my enemies will only end up dead. You talk too much nonsense. Buzz! The sky collapsed and the void shook. The center of Yi Xian's brows glowed. It was a killing light that could shake the heavens and earth. The heavenly punishing halberd floated out from between his brows, and the killing intent that pierced through the ancient times filled the entire world. Yi Xian was not careless and would not put himself in danger. This had always been his way of doing things. In the face of Yang Jian's Dharma Eye of Heaven and Earth, the heaven-destroying halberd was his most powerful means to kill his opponent. Dharma Eye of Heaven and Earth, destructive light of immortal. Buzz! Yang Jian roared to the sky. He did not hold back anymore. His third vertical eye finally opened and the endless sky was destroyed. The destructive light of immortal fell from the sky. The chi that could annihilate all things bloomed in the human world. Slaughter of the heavens and earth. Yi Xian's hair fluttered in the wind. The heaven-destroying halberd bloomed with killing light. The cold light illuminated the boundless emptiness and seemed to become the only thing in the world. It also plunged this part of the world into endless darkness. The immortal light of annihilation, the endless darkness, the entire mortal world was devoid of any light. No one knew what had happened, and no one knew who was the victor in the end. There was only an aura of annihilation that rippled in the mortal world. Chapter 354. There was no light in the world. The moon was nowhere to be seen. There was only endless darkness. This darkness was indescribable, but it gave people an indescribable sense of fear. The heaven-destroying halberd was the #1 killing weapon of all time. No one knew its origins, and no one knew where it came from. It was an old legend. The heaven-destroying halberd had existed since the beginning of time. Some people even said that it came from the chaos, and that it hid a shocking secret. Some people guessed that this secret had something to do with becoming a saint. Others guessed that the heaven-destroying halberd was not an item of the three realms, but came from outside the chaos. But no matter what the rumors were, the heaven-destroying halberd remained mysterious. The sky darkened. There was no light. It was lonely. A quiet and destructive aura rippled through the entire human realm. It made all living things feel a silent fear. 3 days and 3 nights. The darkness was boundless. When the 4th day arrived, a ray of light bloomed between heaven and earth. A ray of sunlight shone on the human realm, driving away the boundless darkness. Gradually, the human realm revealed its original appearance. The magma in the Earth's core had long been extinguished. The land within millions of miles was in ruins. The cooling magma had turned into reefs. It made the land look ferocious and terrifying. Above the sky, in the boundless void, the immortal light around Yang Jian disappeared. Traces of golden divine blood flowed out of his third eye. He stared blankly at Yi Xian. It was as if his soul had left his body. Yi Xian was dressed in black, and his jet-black hair hung behind his head. A gust of wind blew, causing his hair to flutter in the wind. He calmly and indifferently looked at Yang Jian. When his eyes opened and closed, there was no sadness or joy. Buzz! The heaven-destroying halberd turned into a dot of black light and returned to Yi Xian's forehead. The chaotic aura disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had never appeared in the world. Puff, puff, puff. Yang Jian spat out 3 mouthfuls of immortal blood. He raised a trembling hand and pointed at Yi Xian. His eyes were focused, but they were gradually disappearing. The vigorous life force was also gradually dissipating. Why? Crack, crack, crack. Yang Jian's body was cracking inch by inch as golden blood spurted out from every part of his body. The most shocking thing was that his third eye was bleeding profusely until it dimmed completely. Woo! Bang! A violent wind blew, and the 3-pointed, double-edged blade in his hand turned into stars that filled the sky. Yang Jian half knelt in the air, but even when his life was about to end, he still stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Why? Why did I lose to you? Yang Jian asked in a low voice, as if he couldn't accept this fact. He was the dignified war god of the 3 dimensions, the #1 expert beneath Daluo Jingxian. His aspirations were higher than the heavens, and his future was limitless. Yet today, he was going to die at the hands of a native of the land of exile. Yang Jian couldn't accept it, and he didn't want to accept it. He didn't know how he was defeated, but the world was plunged into endless darkness. His Dharma eye of heaven and earth felt extreme pain, and the so-called immortal light of destruction was also annihilated in the endless darkness. In the silent and fearful darkness, his body was shattering and his celestial energy was flowing away. When the world regained its light, his physical body had also completely declined. His incomparably powerful physical body had also turned into a mortal body. What? What kind of spiritual treasure is this? Tears of blood flowed out of Yang Jian's eyes as he asked Yi Xian in a daze. He was truly unwilling to accept this. His cultivation was clearly higher than Yi Xian's, but under his opponent's strange weapon, he was still defeated too miserably. Yi Xian leisurely strolled through the clouds until he stood in front of Yang Jian. He silently looked down at the war god of the 3 realms. Yang Jian, Yi Xian said calmly, you were destined to die the moment you came to the mortal world. Let me send you on your last journey. Immortal light shone from his palms and fingers, and a trace of coldness flashed through his eyes. Huh! Yang Jian suddenly burst into wild laughter. As he laughed and laughed, blood flowed from his mouth. However, when he looked at Yi Xian, his eyes were filled with grief and anger. Yi Xian, I admit that I'm no match for you. But if you want to kill me, you're still far from it. Nascent spirit heaven evasion. Bang! Yang Jian's body exploded into a mist of blood. A golden light escaped from his body. Yang Jian had used some kind of technique to destroy his physical body and allow his nascent spirit to escape. As long as the nascent spirit did not die, it could be reborn. This was a technique that every immortal had. As the first person of the third generation of the clan of enlightenment, Yang Jian had the nascent spirit to protect his life. The nascent spirit heaven evasion was an extremely powerful secret technique. This technique was created by Yuanchi Tianzuan and was passed down to Immortal Yuding. Yang Jian was Immortal Yuding's personal disciple, so this life-saving technique was his last trump card. Yang Jian did not want to die in the hands of Yi Xian. This was why he used this technique at the last moment. As long as he could escape back to the Earth Immortal realm, he could be reborn with the help of his master. Although his cultivation would fall to the realm of Tai, it was much better than dying in the hands of Yi Xian. Moreover, Yang Jian wanted to announce Yi Xian's identity to the public. As long as the living beings in the Earth Immortal realm knew that Yi Xian came from the human realm, when everyone knew about his origin, they would definitely make Yi Xian die without a burial place. The void froze and the blood mist dispersed. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. A cold killing intent flashed across his eyes. His cold and vicious voice echoed in the human realm. Trying to run? Do you think you can? Boom! Yi Xian took a step forward. The sky fell and the earth cracked. Like a flash of light, he chased after Yang Jian. He could not let Yang Jian escape back to the Earth Immortal realm. Otherwise, the human realm would be exposed to the immortals and gods everywhere. The human realm was Yi Xian's foundation and his homeland. If he encountered an unimaginable enemy one day, the human realm would be his place of cultivation and recuperation. Therefore, he could not let anything happen to the human realm. The nascent spirit heaven evasion was so close yet worlds apart. In just 3 breaths, Yang Jian had already fled into the reverse passage. Yi Xian was not slow either. With the somersault cloud, he crossed hundreds of thousands of miles in an instant. He chased after Yang Jian into the reverse passage. In the reverse passage, 2 streams of light, one chasing and the other escaping. Yi Xian's body bloomed with the golden light of Luo Tian. Terrifying killing intent rippled out from him, causing the reverse passage to rumble and shake. Die! Yi Xian's fingers were like the sky, suppressing everything. He let out a low, sinister growl. Immortal techniques were cast one after another, violently suppressing Yang Jian's nascent spirit. This also forced Yang Jian to flee for his life. The escape light around him showed signs of cracking under Yi Xian's terrifying attacks. Yi Xian, you can't kill me! Yang Jian roared in shame and anger. He had completely gone mad. In order to escape from Yi Xian, he had refined his nascent spirit to the extreme. Even if he had to exhaust the power of his nascent spirit, he had to enter the Earth Immortal realm. 3,000 miles, 3,000 miles. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. When the door to the Earth Immortal realm lit up in front of him, Yang Jian screamed in his heart. His eyes shone with hope. As long as he could enter the Earth Immortal realm, he would be able to save his life. Chapter 355. The distance of 3,000 miles was covered in the blink of an eye. However, Yang Jian did not dare to run in a straight line under the bombardment of Yi Xian's immortal killing technique. Instead, he circled around to avoid Yi Xian's pursuit. Yang Jian was very glad that the primordial spirit heaven evasion he used was passed down by the heavenly lord of the primordial beginning. It possessed a mysterious and unfathomable power. Otherwise, under Yi Xian's pursuit for hundreds of thousands of miles, his soul would have long since dissipated. Yi Xian's eyes were malicious. His palms turned into an illusion and the golden light of Luo Tian spread in all directions. He wanted to block Yang Jian's escape route. However, his opponent's technique was so mysterious that he could not kill him in one blow. Primordial Spirit Void. Yi Xian coldly said. In the end, he activated a forbidden secret technique and suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was beside Yang Jian. Die! Bang! Yang Jian's face changed. He could not defend himself in time. He could only take Yi Xian's terrifying attack. His primordial spirit cracked and became dim. However, it was also at this moment that Yang Jian borrowed Yi Xian's strength to charge out of the reverse passage and into the Earth Immortal realm. This caused Yi Xian's expression to slightly change. He didn't expect Yang Jian to be able to survive after taking a blow from him. In fact, Yi Xian had underestimated Yang Jian. Yang Jian was a third-generation disciple of the Clan of Enlightenment and Yuanshi Tianzuan's disciple. He was naturally different from other immortals. After all, Yang Jian had cultivated for hundreds of thousands of years, and his soul had been forged to the point where it was as tough as diamond. It was even tougher than his body. If he wanted to kill Yang Jian, this hasty attack would only be able to disperse his soul. It would not be able to kill him in one fell swoop. I can't let him live. Otherwise, there will be great changes. Yi Xian murmured coldly. Whether it was for the secrets of the human realm or for himself, Yang Jian had to die. With one step, Yi Xian left the retrograde passage and entered the Earth God realm. The spiritual qi that covered the sky and earth rushed toward him. Boundless heaven and earth, thousands of miles of pursuit. Chasing him from the sky to the ground, from the ground to the sky, Yang Jian's nascent divinity was constantly attacked by Yi Xian. Gradually, it began to crack, and the light of his nascent divinity dimmed. It wouldn't be long before his soul was completely destroyed. The dignified war god of the three dimensions, the #1 expert beneath Daluo Jingxian, had fled for his life in such a sorry state today, and this simply caused Yang Jian to feel extreme shame and indignation. But for the sake of survival, he could only flee desperately towards the Gold Glow Cave on Jade Spring Mountain. This was because Yang Jian knew that there was no one who could stop Yi Xian now. Only his master, Yuding Enlightened Being, could save his life. The two of them, one fleeing and the other chasing, caused too much of a commotion. Naturally, it attracted the attention of the living beings of the Earth God realm. When the living beings of the Earth God realm realized that Yang Jian, the war god of the three dimensions, had his primordial spirit knocked out of his body, everyone was shocked speechless. Is that Erlang Xiansheng? How is this possible? Who is the one chasing after him? In an immortal mountain paradise, three itinerant immortals were sitting and discussing the Tao. When they saw the scene of Yi Xian chasing after Yang Jian in the sky, the three itinerant immortals muttered in shock. When one of the itinerant immortals saw Yi Xian's face, he exclaimed in shock, "I know him. That's the East Pole Emperor." His entire being was stunned to the extreme. Immortals below, hurry and inform the celestial court. Yang Jian's primordial spirit cracked apart as he streaked through the sky. When he caught sight of the three itinerant immortals, he screamed out for help. However, under the relentless pursuit of Yi Xian, before he could even finish his words, he could only flee into the distance in a wretched manner. What should we do? The three itinerant immortals snapped out of their stupor. When they looked at one another, their gazes were filled with fear. The feud between Yi Xian and Yang Jian could be said to have spread through the entire three realms. Some time ago, there were even rumors of Yang Jian trampling down the Weiyang Palace of the Celestial Court to seek trouble with Yi Xian. He even declared that he was going to kill Yi Xian. But, it had only been a short period of time since then. When this war god of the three dimensions appeared once again, he was being hunted down by the East Pole Emperor so crazily that even his physical body was destroyed, leaving behind only his primordial spirit that was fleeing for his life. If they hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe such a thing. To think that the East Pole Emperor would be an all-heaven golden immortal, how could this be? Yang Jian, he's the #1 being below Daluo Jingxian, this East Pole Emperor, the two itinerant immortals murmured out with pale faces. Clearly, their hearts were rattled to an extreme. Fellow Taoists, this is not something that we can participate in. If we were to report this matter to the Celestial Court, we might offend the East Pole Emperor as well. Let's not do something as foolish as this. One of the itinerant immortals was trying his best to calm down his raging emotions as he spoke with a resolute voice. But Yang Jian ordered us to, idiot. Are you crazy? Yang Jian isn't someone to be trifled with. But, does that mean that the East Pole Emperor is? Big Bro is right. We can't participate in this matter. We can't stay here for long. We had better hurry up and leave. The three itinerant immortals discussed for a moment before leaving the place hurriedly. Clearly, this was not something that they could interfere in. At the same time, the same thing was happening all over the Earth Immortal world. After all, Yi Xian's pursuit of Yang Jian had caused a huge commotion. How could the billions of living beings in the Earth Immortal world not see this scene? The entire world was in an uproar as the three realms were shaken. Paper could not contain fire after all. When the news of Yi Xian chasing after Yang Jian spread out, it naturally reached the Celestial Court as well. The 33rd Celestial Court. The Jade Emperor was seated in the Lingxiao Palace as the group of immortals stood on both sides. The all-seeing eyes and all-hearing ears were reporting rapidly. There was even the scene of Yi Xian chasing after Yang Jian in the mystic heaven realm. The group of immortals was dead silent. Even the Jade Emperor's face was extremely gloomy. There was an indescribable fear in his eyes as he looked at Yi Xian in the mystic heaven realm. 300 years, it was only 300 years. The Jade Emperor could not believe that Yi Xian was an all-heaven Xian immortal 300 years ago. How did he become an all-heaven golden immortal all of a sudden? What frightened the Jade Emperor the most was that Yang Jian's physical body was no longer there. Even his primordial spirit was dim and lightless. He was being chased by Yi Xian crazily. In less than 3 days, Yang Jian's soul would disperse and he would die. Not only was the Jade Emperor shocked, but the group of immortals was also speechless. However, when they looked at Yi Xian in the mystic heaven realm, there was an indescribable fear in their eyes. What should we do? Venus Taibai said with a trembling voice. Obviously, she knew that the situation had become serious. Your Majesty, please issue a decree to save Yang Jian's life. Grand Tutor Wenzhong stepped forward and bowed to the Jade Emperor. The rest of the immortals of the Chan sect stepped forward and begged the Jade Emperor. Humph. Suddenly, Zhao Gongming stepped forward and sneered, everyone, don't forget that it was Yang Jian who attacked the Weiyang Palace first. He even killed a few of the East Emperor's subordinates. This was a fight between the two of them. Yang Jian was not as strong as the East Emperor and his physical body was destroyed. Even if his soul was dispersed, he only has himself to blame. Zhao Gongming, you. Grand Tutor Wen scolded angrily, but he did not know how to refute. Chapter 356. Could it be that only Yang Jian is allowed to kill the East Pole Emperor, but not the East Pole Emperor? Zhao Gongming sneered, causing the Jia sect to agree. The two great orthodoxies faced each other in the Lingxiao Hall, and a strong smell of gunpowder permeated the air. The Jade Emperor's face was gloomy, and no one knew what he was thinking. The Jade Emperor was most afraid of a fight between two great orthodoxies. As the supreme of the three realms, he could not be biased, or he would offend one of them. That was his biggest concern. However, Yang Jian could not die. It was not because Yang Jian was his nephew, which made him feel kinship with him, but because Yang Jian was the first disciple of the third generation of the Chan sect, and also the most promising existence to become a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal. If Yang Jian died in Yi Xian's hands, not to mention whether Yuanshi Tianzuan would be angry, the Jade Emperor would not be able to bear the anger of the 12 ancient golden immortals of the Chan sect. Below, Zhao Gongming sneered, but he was also shocked. He did not expect Yi Xian to become an all-heaven golden immortal and force Yang Jian to such a state. However, Zhao Gongming was also the most excited. It was as if he could see the revival of the Jie school, and Yi Xian was the last hope of their Jie school. This also caused him to spare no effort in fighting against the Chan school to the end. Your Majesty, if you still don't send troops to stop the East Pole Emperor, my junior brother Yang Jian's soul will truly disperse. I'm afraid that when that happens, my martial uncles and martial uncles will definitely come to the heavenly court to ask you for advice. Grand Preceptor Wen's face was flushed. He no longer cared about his dignity, and his words were faintly threatening. This also made the Jade Emperor's face change. He took a deep look at Grand Preceptor Wen, but he still did not get angry. Pass down my decree. Order Li Jing and his son to deploy 100,000 celestial soldiers to welcome the return of the East Pole Emperor to the Celestial Court. Do not get into a conflict with the East Pole Emperor. Tell the East Pole Emperor that I have prepared a banquet for him in the Celestial Court so that he can calm down. The Jade Emperor's words were tactful and he finally issued a decree. That made the Chan school lineage heave a sigh of relief. Li Jing and Neza looked anxious. At that moment, they received the Jade Emperor's decree and did not stop at all. They immediately went to deploy troops. The Jade Emperor is being unfair. We refuse to accept this. Zhao Gongming reprimanded coldly. He flicked his sleeve and brought the immortals of Jie School out of the Lingshao Hall. That made the Jade Emperor's expression change slightly, but he could only sigh helplessly. In the end, he had to make a choice. He could not afford to offend the 12 ancient golden immortals. He could only slightly offend the Jie School. There was no other way. Unfortunately, although the Jade Emperor had issued a decree and Li Jing and his son had deployed 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, as well as many immortals of Chan's school, how could Yi Xian take them seriously? The golden clouds covered the sky. The immortals led the way, and 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals followed. Venus Taibai held the Jade Emperor's decree and rushed towards the Earth immortal world, hoping to save Yang Jian's life. At the same time, when dozens of demon kings received the news of Yi Xian's appearance, the Heavenly Rock King led them and mobilized all the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals under him. He even sent a message to the billions of demon soldiers of Huagua Mountain in the lower realm to raise the Tongtian demon flag and help Yi Xian. The three realms were in an uproar. Chaos was about to erupt. When the two sides appeared in the Earth immortal world together, all the living beings in the three realms looked over. Whether it was the immortal god mighty figures or the itinerant immortal demon kings, they were all silently watching the development of the situation. They were even more shocked by Yi Xian's cultivation level. He had actually chased Yang Jian to a dead end. This also made Yi Xian's name of the East Pole Emperor shake the three realms and replace Yang Jian's position in the three realms. The endless sky sealed the world. Yi Xian sneered viciously. He stood in the immortal cloud with his hands behind his back. Yang Jian's essence soul cracked and kept retreating. He looked at Yi Xian with a hint of despair and viciousness. After being chased for thousands of miles, the power of Yang Jian's essence soul was finally exhausted. After being ruthlessly attacked by Yi Xian, he had reached the end of his life. Yi Xian, you can't kill me. If you kill me, you will become an enemy of the Chan school. There will be no place for you in the three realms. Yang Jian was finally afraid under the threat of death. He only hoped that he could make Yi Xian fear him and let him escape with his life. Bam! Yi Xian flung out a ray of immortal light, causing Yang Jian to fall to the ground. His cracked primordial spirit body was collapsing inch by inch. Without waiting for Yang Jian to recover from his shock, a wide foot suddenly stomped on his head. You useless piece of trash. You're about to die and you still have so much nonsense to say. Yi Xian was a vengeful person. He had never forgotten the humiliation Yang Jian had wantonly humiliated him 600 years ago. He clearly remembered that Yang Jian had strangled him like a cat playing with a mouse. Bam! 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 His feet glowed as he violently stomped on the ground. With every stomp of Yi Xian's foot, Yang Jian's primordial spirit let out a miserable scream. His primordial spirit's body continuously collapsed, and the specks of golden light dissipated into the air. Yi Xian's idea was simple. He wanted Yang Jian to die in humiliation and pain. Only then could he dispel the hatred in his heart. Emperor, please stop. Suddenly, the sky opened and golden clouds that covered the sky descended. Taibai Jinxing held the Jade Emperor's decree and came over. The immortals of Chan's school, Li Jing, and the 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals followed closely behind. When they saw Yang Jian being stepped on by Yi Xian, they all looked ashamed and angry, but they didn't say anything. Emperor, His Majesty has a decree for you to return to the Celestial Court. His Majesty has already set up a banquet for you in the Celestial Court. Please let true Lord Erlang live. Taibai Jinxing bowed and lowered his posture to the extreme. He held the Jade Emperor's decree with both hands and handed it over to Yi Xian with an extremely humble smile on his face. Jade Emperor's decree. Looking at the 100,000 heavenly soldiers and the immortals of the Chan school who didn't dare to say anything, Yi Xian smiled contemptuously and took the Jade Emperor's decree. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he slowly tore the Jade Emperor's decree into pieces and threw it into the void. Emperor, you! Venus Taibai's expression changed drastically. He couldn't believe that Yi Xian would be so daring to do such a disgraceful thing. If I want to kill someone, not to mention the Jade Emperor, even if Daluo Jingxian is here, Yang Jian will only end up dead. Yi Xian looked around at the immortals of the Chan school. A sinister smile appeared on his face. He said coldly, or do you want to be enemies with me and save the trash Yang Jian? Buzz! Yi Xian's body rippled with the golden light of all heaven. An extremely terrifying power filled the sky and the earth. The murderous aura of heaven and earth bloomed and violently suppressed the immortals of the Chan school. If the great Luo golden immortals did not appear, then the all-heaven golden immortals were the strongest. Moreover, Yi Xian was an invincible existence among the all-heaven golden immortals. Even Yang Jian's body had been shattered by him and he had to flee for his life. Even if the immortals of the Chan school and the 100,000 heavenly soldiers were by his side, how could they be his match? Chapter 357. The difference of a major realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was not something that could be made up for by numbers. Otherwise, why would the dozens of demon kings not dare to say anything when Yang Jian attacked the Weiyang Palace? That was the suppression of cultivation. It was also the truth that the strong were respected. East Emperor, please spare junior brother Yang Jian's life for the sake of the Chan school. Grand Preceptor Wen's face turned red. He knew that he was no match for Yi Xian, so he could only lower his stance and plead tactfully. He hoped that Yi Xian would let Yang Jian survive this calamity on account of the Chan school being a sage orthodoxy. East Emperor, senior brother Yang Jian has already been defeated. As the saying goes, one should spare people wherever possible. Please have mercy. Neza also lowered his head towards Yi Xian on his windfire wheels. However, the anxiety in his eyes was extremely obvious. It was as if he was stalling for time and waiting for someone to arrive. What a joke! Yang Jian caused a ruckus in the Weiyang Palace and even killed several people. He only has himself to blame for his current situation. Suddenly, golden clouds rose in the distance. The Heavenly Rock King and Zhao Gongming led 50,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals over. Before they arrived, their cold voices could be heard. At this moment, Yang Jian was ashamed and angry. He only had a little bit of essence spirit light left. As long as Yi Xian attacked gently, he would be completely annihilated and cease to exist in the world. His eyes were filled with despair and extreme indignation. However, when he met Neza's eyes, a hint of joy flashed across his eyes. He seemed to have understood something. Emperor East Pole, it's all my fault. I, Yang Jian, am here to apologize to you. Please let me live. Yang Jian lowered his stance and pleaded to Yi Xian. However, killing intent flashed across his eyes. No! Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. A great sense of terror suddenly attacked his mind. He suddenly restrained Yang Jian's essence spirit in his hand. Then, he looked into the distance with a gloomy look in his eyes. He knew Yang Jian's temperament too well. Even if he died, Yang Jian would never bow his head to him. But now, Yang Jian was shamelessly begging him. There must be a big conspiracy behind this. Furthermore, Yi Xian had cultivated the primordial spirit void before and was extremely sensitive to auras. He could faintly sense an extremely terrifying wave of energy rushing over. Daluo Jingxian? Yi Xian murmured gloomily. He suddenly came to his senses and his expression became extremely heavy. It was also at this moment that the world suddenly changed, and an extremely terrifying scene appeared. Time seemed to stop and space seemed to be frozen. The origin immortal light blotted out the heavens, causing the entire world to freeze and become motionless. Little friend, please calm down. For this old man's sake, please spare my disciple's life. In a speck of immortal light, a figure strolled out from the clouds. However, the origin immortal light around him was slightly rippling, causing Yi Xian's eyes to narrow and even his own immortal light to become somewhat unstable. Greetings, Uncle Master Yu Ding. Greetings, ancient golden immortal. Greetings, immortal Yu Ding. When immortal Yu Ding appeared, the immortals of the Chan sect were overjoyed and bowed in the void. Zhao Gongming and the dozens of demon kings were pale, but they still bowed to immortal Yu Ding. Daluo Jingxian. He was beyond heaven and earth, not in the 5 elements, not in the 6 paths of reincarnation, not in the 3 books of heaven, earth, and man. He was an existence that was revered in the earth immortal world. Even though Zhao Gongming and the others were of the Jie sect, they still had to bow in the face of an existence like Daluo Jingxian. This had nothing to do with the battle of orthodoxy, but was a kind of respect for Daluo Jingxian, and more importantly, a reverence for the strong. Little friend, my disciple is arrogant and domineering. It's my fault for not disciplining him well. I hope you can form a good relationship with me and let my disciple live. It can be considered that I owe you a favor. Immortal Yu Ding looked kind and did not use his power to suppress others. His voice was extremely sincere. As Immortal Yu Ding's words fell, the immortals were shocked and silent. They looked at Immortal Yu Ding with puzzlement. Daluo Jinxian's favor? This was simply unimaginable to the immortals. One had to know that immortals were most afraid of being tainted by karma, especially owing others a favor. This was a great hindrance to one's cultivation. This was equivalent to Immortal Yu Ding promising to do something for Yi Xian. As long as it was not related to his own safety, as long as Yi Xian made a request, Immortal Yu Ding could not refuse. At this time, Zhao Gongming and the others shook their heads helplessly. There was a hint of disappointment in their eyes because they knew that Yang Jian's life was saved in the end. Daluo Jingxian was detached from worldly affairs. He was the supreme existence in the 3 realms of heaven, earth, and man. Now, Immortal Yu Ding had lowered his posture to plead with Yi Xian. This was already giving Yi Xian a lot of face. This was something that had never happened since ancient times. Moreover, he had also made a promise to Yi Xian. Moreover, Immortal Yu Ding was not only Daluo Jingxian. His master was Yuanshi Tianzuan, and he himself was one of the 12 ancient golden immortals. If Yi Xian did not give Immortal Yu Ding this face, it was simply an act of seeking death by becoming an enemy of the 12 ancient golden immortals. At this time, the immortals of the Chan sect were glowing. Chapter 358. Silence, silence, a deathly silence. Yang Jian was dead. His soul was scattered, and he died in front of Immortal Yu Ding. When this scene appeared in the eyes of the immortals, a silent fear spread between heaven and earth. Whether it was the immortals of the Chan school or the immortals of the Jie school led by Zhao Gongming, they all became dead silent at this moment. They only looked at Yi Xian with an indescribable horror in their eyes. Was he crazy? Or was he courting death? Did Yi Xian not know that Immortal Yu Ding was Daluo Jingxian? How dare he kill Yang Jian? Did Yi Xian not know that Yang Jian was the only disciple of Immortal Yu Ding? Was Yi Xian not afraid that Immortal Yu Ding would fall into a rage and avenge Yang Jian? No one could bear the anger of Daluo Jingxian. If they were remembered by Daluo Jingxian, they would only end up dead. Yi Xian knew that, and he also understood the consequences of killing Yang Jian. However, he had to kill Yang Jian. Even Daluo Jingxian could not change his decision. Not to mention that Yang Jian knew that he came from the human world. If this news spread throughout the three realms, Yi Xian himself would be in an unimaginable danger. Moreover, the grudge between the two of them had long been irreconcilable. Yi Xian was a very simple person. He always believed that if he did not kill a snake, it would hurt him. If he let Yang Jian go today, Yi Xian would definitely stab him in the back in the future. Such a stupid thing was not something that Yi Xian could do. If you cut the grass without removing the roots, it would grow again when the spring breeze blew. This was a sentence that Yi Xian had always believed in. Therefore, Yang Jian had to die. Even if he risked being killed by Immortal Yuding, he had to kill this person. The world was silent and everything was silent. In the vast sky, the void was stagnant. Immortal Yuding stared blankly at Yang Jian's primordial spirit dissipating without a trace. His body was trembling slightly, and there was a trace of mist in his red eyes. A drop of tear flowed down his cheek. Immortal Yuding was in a trance. Memories from long ago rose and fell in his mind, as if bringing him back to the distant past. How long had it been? Hundreds of thousands of years, right? Perfected Yuding could not remember exactly how long it had been. He only remembered that in the distant past, a young man had crossed mountains and rivers and knelt outside the Golden Cloud's cave. No matter how the wind blew or the rain fell, he remained motionless. He was the nephew of the Jade Emperor, and his mother was the Holy Mother of Peach Mountain. He knelt outside the cave of Golden Clouds and begged Yang Jian to accept him as his disciple. He knelt for 7 days and 7 nights. At that time, Yang Jian was still a teenager. On the 8th day, the young man finally fainted outside the Golden Clouds cave. 7 days without a drop of water had put him on the verge of death. Immortal Yuding stood in the void in a daze. He clutched his heart tightly, but the Daluo immortal light around him rippled slightly. The wind rose. The sound of the wind was not loud, but it carried an indescribable silence. Rumble. Thunder. Crimson lightning was faintly discernible in the sky. The endless sky was collapsing, and an aura of nirvanic extermination reverberated in all directions. The world says that I'm a kind person and that I'm a good person among the Daluo Jingxian. Today, Erlang's soul has dissipated. As his master, I can't save his life. Immortal Yuding smiled bitterly, but the world was gradually darkening. The eternal spacetime seemed to be distorted at this moment. Yi Xian. Suddenly, Immortal Yuding's peaceful face was no longer there. His face was slowly twisting until it turned ferocious. As he clenched his fists, his veins bulged. He looked at Yi Xian with a resentful killing intent. It doesn't matter if you're the main character of this immeasurable calamity. Today, this old man will take your dog life even if I'm punished by my master. His silver-white hair danced wildly in the wind. The sky was filled with thunderous booms. The Daluo immortal light of the Tongtian had illuminated the past and present. When Immortal Yuding's voice fell, the mountains within thousands of miles were collapsing. The wrath of the Daluo Jingxian could turn the world upside down. This was not just a saying. It proved that the Daluo Jingxian was terrifying to an unimaginable degree. Emperor, run! Zhao Gongming's face was pale as he roared at Yi Xian. He had never seen Immortal Yuding look so terrifying. He clearly wanted to annihilate Yi Xian's soul and make Yi Xian unable to reincarnate. Uncle Master Yuding is angry. Run! Grand Preceptor Wen's expression changed drastically. He did not dare to stay at all. He called the immortals of the Chan sect and led 100,000 celestial soldiers to flee to the outside world. It was not just the Chan sect. The Jia sect was also frantically fleeing. Dozens of monster kings were also retreating. It was not that they did not want to help Yi Xian, but that Daluo Jingxian was angry. That was a death sentence. Even if they stood on Yi Xian's side, they would only be courting death. Chapter 359. Yi Xian, give me back the life of my disciple. Daoist Master Yu Ding's beard and hair all stood up. His furious roar of extreme hatred shattered the sky. When he stretched out his aged palm, the entire world shook violently. A giant palm from the heavens suddenly slapped down towards Yi Xian. Heaven's killing halberd. The pressure of death, the crisis of life and death. Facing Daoist Master Yu Ding's attack, Yi Xian's entire body tensed up. His eyes froze because this was the greatest crisis he'd ever encountered. Boundless darkness covered the sky and the earth. A cold light appeared quietly. A murderous aura that penetrated the ancient and modern times bloomed on the heavens killing halberd. When Yi Xian poured all his immortal power into the heavens killing halberd, he also violently attacked with the halberd. Bang! The sky exploded and the world shook. When the cold light collided with the giant palm, the boundless darkness shattered and disappeared. Yi Xian's body cracked inch by inch and the heavens killing halberd fell out of his hand. Puff! 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 After spitting out 3 mouthfuls of blood, Yi Xian's body flew backward like a kite with a broken string. His blood-soaked body looked extremely miserable. It was not that the heavens killing halberd was not strong, but that immortal Yu Ding was too terrifying. The gap between the golden immortals of all heaven and Daluo Jingxian was like a chasm. Even though Yi Xian had the heavens killing halberd in hand, he was definitely no match for immortal Yu Ding. It was all thanks to the heaven-punishing halberd that he was able to survive the attack of the golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven, that he was able to offset most of the power. Otherwise, he would have been killed by immortal Yu Ding. Primordial Spirit Void. Yi Xian was covered in blood, but he was roaring ferociously. He knew that he was no match for immortal Yu Ding, so he directly used the forbidden secret technique, hoping to escape from this place. Yi Xian's body turned illusory and disappeared into nothingness. The void of primordial spirit was strange and unpredictable. It was a strange secret technique of the forbidden chapter. In an instant, it made Yi Xian disappear from immortal Yu Ding's eyes. However, immortal Yu Ding was not surprised at all. Instead, he looked around with resentment and his cold voice slowly sounded. Beyond heaven and earth, not within the 5 elements, Daluo Tongtian, all Daos returned to one, fix. The origin immortal art spanned across the heavens. Reverend Yu Ding formed a hand seal, and the origin immortal light of the origin immortal sealed the world. Not even a fly could escape his seal. At this moment, Yi Xian's face was deathly pale. He hid himself in the void and retracted his aura to the extreme. However, his fists were slightly clenched because he wasn't sure if the void of his primordial spirit would allow him to survive this life-or-death tribulation. Yi Xian, you can't escape. If I don't destroy your soul today, how can I face my poor disciple? Immortal Yu Ding's immortal light lingered around him. He strolled between heaven and earth, using some kind of immortal art to sense Yi Xian's position. What should I do? Yi Xian frowned. Blood flowed from the corners of his mouth and there was a touch of despair in his eyes. Immortal Yu Ding's blow made him completely understand the terror of Daluo Jingxian. It was no longer a suppression of strength, but a suppression of the great Tao. Daluo Jingxian, the Tongtian, knew himself well. His every move carried a vast heavenly might. Not to mention a mere golden immortal of all heaven, even if there were 100 golden immortals of all heaven, they would still be no match for immortal Yu Ding. Despair, unwillingness, and a touch of mournfulness. Yi Xian was not willing to die in the hands of immortal Yu Ding. Although the heaven-destroying halberd was mysterious and unfathomable, he could not exert its true power. The heaven-destroying halberd was like an adult's weapon, and Yi Xian was a child. His strength could not allow him to use the heaven-destroying halberd. Naturally, he could not manifest the power of this primordial ominous weapon. A dead end was imminent. This also made Yi Xian think hard, hoping to find a way to break out of this situation. Time and space are inverted, return to the origin. Suddenly, immortal Yu Ding made a celestial art. The immortal light of the great all-heaven rolled out. This part of the world was collapsing and then reforming again. An extremely inexplicable wave bloomed between heaven and earth, making Yi Xian's heart sink. A sense of death filled his mind. Found you. Rumble. Immortal Yuding said resentfully. He blasted a palm at Yi Xian's location. This also made Yi Xian's expression change drastically. He turned into a stream of light and fled into the distance. Can you escape? Bang! Sealing the heaven and earth, the palm and fingers suppressed. Yi Xian did not even have the chance to dodge. He was directly slapped into the void. His body collapsed inch by inch into a bloody mess. The golden light of the great all-heaven had dissipated without a trace. Just one blow from Daluo Jingxian was enough to seriously injure Yi Xian and leave him on the verge of death. At the same time, Moon Star, Moon Palace. Zhao Gongming's face was pale. He was bowing outside the Moon Palace and saying something anxiously. Fairy, you are the only one who can save the East Pole Emperor's life now. Fairy, please ask the Jade Emperor to take action. The Jia school will remember this kindness in our hearts and will never dare to forget it. Zhao Gongming bowed and paid his respects. His voice also entered the Moon Palace. Although the Jia sect had declined, it was still the orthodoxy of the Tongtian after all. It also had the existence of Daluo Jingxian. However, distant water could not quench the immediate thirst. Now, the only one who could save Yi Xian's life was the Fairy of the Moon Palace. A slender figure walked out of the Moon Palace quickly. The Fairy of the Moon Palace covered her face with a veil, but the aura around her was extremely chaotic. She looked at Zhao Gongming with a complicated expression. He actually killed Yang Jian? Is he crazy? The Fairy of the Moon Palace's voice trembled slightly. Fairy, only you can ask the Jade Emperor to help now. Immortal Yuding is furious. If we are a moment later, I'm afraid the East Pole Emperor will. Zhao Gongming could not continue. This hateful bastard, why is he so reckless? Immortal Yuding is Daluo Jingxian. The Fairy of the Moon Palace did not need Zhao Gongming to continue. She knew the current situation of Yi Xian. This also made her clench her fists. She kept cursing Yi Xian in her heart for being so reckless. I'll go to the Celestial Court now. At this moment of life and death, the Fairy of the Moon Palace did not know what she was thinking. Logically speaking, Yi Xian had once blasphemed against her. She should want Yi Xian to die. However, when Yi Xian was really in danger of dying, a feeling of panic rose from the bottom of her heart. In her mind, Yi Xian's domineering face appeared, which made her extremely emotional. Without any hesitation, or perhaps it was just a feeling, the Fairy of the Moon Palace directly rushed to the Celestial Court. This also made Zhao Gongming very happy. He hurriedly followed the Fairy of the Moon Palace. The Celestial Court, 33 layers of heaven. The Jade Emperor was high in the sky. The Shentian mirror was condensed in the void. He was looking at the image in the Shentian mirror with a flushed face. At this moment, he was in an extremely good mood. Yang Jian's death made the Jade Emperor extremely happy. It could be considered as getting rid of one of his worries. At this moment, Yi Xian was suppressed in the void by Immortal Yuding. It would not be long before Yi Xian also died. How could the Jade Emperor not be happy to get rid of two of his biggest worries in one day? Chapter 360. The Moon Fairy has arrived. Suddenly, just as the Jade Emperor was excitedly watching the scene in the Shentian mirror, the immortal official's voice came from outside the Lingshao Hall. The Jade Emperor was stunned. He did not expect the Moon Fairy to come to see him at such a time. Normally, the Jade Emperor would be extremely excited if the Moon Fairy came to the Celestial Court. However, today was too special. Yi Xian was facing death, and the Moon Fairy came to the Celestial Court at this time. How could the Jade Emperor not have other thoughts? The moonlight shone down. The Moon Fairy entered the Lingshao Hall and bowed to the Jade Emperor. Fairy, why are you so free today to see me? Although the fairy of the Moon Palace covered her face with a veil, the Jade Emperor's eyes still flashed with infatuation. Then, he spoke gently. "Your Majesty, I want to ask you to save Yi Xian's life." The Moon Fairy knew that time was tight. If she was late, Yi Xian would definitely die in the hands of Immortal Yuding. This made her beg the Jade Emperor directly. As the Fairy of the Moon Palace finished speaking, the atmosphere in the entire Lingxiao Hall became oppressive. The Jade Emperor's face was as dark as water. He clenched his fists slightly, proving how agitated he was. "Fairy, I can't help you with this. Yi Xian killed Yang Jian. This is a serious crime. Moreover, Immortal Yuding is an ancient golden immortal. If he wants to avenge his disciple, how can I stop him?" The Jade Emperor said calmly. However, if one listened carefully, they would find that there was an indescribable jealousy in his voice. Hearing the Jade Emperor's words, the Moon Fairy's breath became chaotic. She said in a sad voice, "The three emperors in the celestial court are missing. You are the only one who is Daluo Jingxian. If you don't save him, he will really die in the hands of Immortal Yuding." Bang! The white jade table in front of the Jade Emperor was smashed to pieces. In the end, he couldn't control the bitterness in his heart and stood up from his throne. "Chang-yi!" The Jade Emperor roared angrily, "Why? Tell me, why is that? How am I inferior to Yi Xian? You actually came to beg me for him. Do you really like him?" The Jade Emperor was already in a state of rage. The Daluo immortal light around him was chaotic. He really could not accept the Moon Fairy begging him for Yi Xian. The Jade Emperor wasn't a fool. To be able to make the Moon Fairy beg him without any regard for face, how could he believe that she wasn't related to Yi Xian? You misunderstood. I have nothing to do with him. It's just that he saved you two back then. I owe him a favor. I must repay it." The Fairy of the Moon Palace bit her lips and said. The Jade Emperor roared. His face was extremely red. He said, "Chang-yi, you are lying. Back then, when Jade Rabbit was suppressed by Primordial Demon, you did not come to beg me for her. Today, he is facing a life and death crisis, but you are begging me. If you don't like him, why are you doing this?" Facing the Jade Emperor's angry questioning, the Moon Fairy bit her lips. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She kept asking herself, did she really like Yi Xian as the Jade Emperor said? Yes, Yi Xian only saved Jade Rabbit. That was not enough for her to beg the Jade Emperor. The Moon Fairy's heart was in a mess. She did not know what was wrong with her. She also did not know if she really liked Yi Xian. However, there was a voice in her heart that told her that she definitely did not want Yi Xian to die in the hands of Immortal Yuding. Chang-yi, you should know how I feel about you. You like osmanthus trees. I personally went to Kunlun Mountain and planted the osmanthus trees on the moon star. You like white. I personally brought people to the cold mountain of heaven and earth to bring a million-year-old cold jade to build a moon palace for you. As long as it is related to you, I will do it myself. Don't you know how I feel about you? The Jade Emperor's face was distorted. He was roaring. His red eyes were extremely sad. How can I not compare to Yi Xian? I am Daluo Jingxian. I am the master of the three realms. What is Yi Xian? Why do you like him and not me? Tell me, why? Why? The Jade Emperor was already crazy. He questioned the Moon Fairy loudly. The decadent aura around him was about to spread out. In the face of the Jade Emperor's question, the Fairy of Guanghan remained silent. This made the entire Lingxiao Hall extremely oppressive. The Jade Emperor fell to the ground powerlessly. He smashed his fists on the ground, proving how unwilling he was. Jade Emperor, I'm begging you. Save him this time. Suddenly, the Moon Fairy smiled sadly. She slowly knelt down. When this scene appeared in front of the Jade Emperor, he was also stunned. However, his heart felt like it was pierced by a knife. It was so painful that he couldn't breathe. "You're kneeling to me for him?" the Jade Emperor said word by word. He stared at the Moon Fairy. A sad smile appeared on his face. The Jade Emperor took a deep breath and then exhaled slowly. He seemed to want to calm himself down. After dozens of breaths, he looked at the Moon Fairy calmly and said, "Okay, okay, okay. I can promise you to save his life. But you have to promise me that you will never see him again. As long as you promise me, I will save his life." The Jade Emperor's voice trembled. "Never see him again?" The Moon Fairy mumbled to herself. "Okay, I promise you." After dozens of breaths, the Moon Fairy said in a hoarse voice. However, her voice was soft and cold. The endless sky sealed the sky and trapped the earth. Perfected Yuding walked slowly toward Yi Xian. The Daluo Immortal Light had already sealed Yi Xian in the void. This was already a situation where there was no chance of survival. "Yi Xian, you killed my beloved disciple. If I don't destroy your soul today, how can I face my poor disciple?" Perfected Yuding's face was ferocious. Murderous intent was about to burst out from his body. At this moment, Yi Xian could not stop bleeding from the corner of his mouth. Under the merciless suppression of Perfected Yuding, he was already seriously injured and on the verge of death. Even the immortal power in his body was almost depleted. "Am I going to die?" Yi Xian muttered to himself. A sad look flashed across his eyes. He was still too careless. Daluo Jinxian's horror was simply beyond his imagination. "Die!" Perfected Yuding shouted angrily. When he raised his palm, the Daluo Immortal Light exploded. It was obvious that he was going to kill Yi Xian in the next moment. "Wait!" Suddenly, without waiting for Perfected Yuding to make a move, a majestic voice came from all directions. Two beams of immortal light streaked across the sky. It was the Moon Fairy and the Jade Emperor. Buzz! The great Luo Immortal Light swept through the heavens and earth. The Jade Emperor appeared wearing the Nine-Dragon Emperor robe. He gloomily glanced at Yi Xian, then looked directly at Daoist Master Yuding and said, "Yuding, you can't kill him." Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor's appearance stunned Perfected Yuding. He never thought that the Supreme of the Three Realms would save Yi Xian. Chapter 361. You want to stop me? Yang Jian's death had already driven Perfected Yuding crazy. Even if the Jade Emperor was here, he would not give him any face. "Yuding, I don't want to make things difficult for you, nor do I want to be enemies with the 12 ancient golden immortals. There are 9 levels of Daluo Heaven, and you're only at the 2nd level. You're no match for me. If you let Yi Xian go today, I won't stop you if you want to kill him in the future." The ruler of the 3 realms, the Jade Emperor. This was not just a saying. To be able to sit on the throne of the ruler of the 3 realms, his cultivation was unimaginably terrifying. The Jade Emperor was an ambitious person. He could endure and show weakness, but this was a side he deliberately showed. When he did not hesitate to go against Perfected Yuding and the 12 ancient golden immortals for the sake of Fairy Guanghan, he also showed the boldness that a ruler of the 3 realms should have. "Yi Xian, are you all right?" Fairy Guanghan quickly walked over and held Yi Xian in her arms. There was a hint of worry in her voice. This scene made the Jade Emperor hold his breath, but he did not say anything. Since Fairy Guanghan had agreed to his conditions, she would never see Yi Xian again after today. This was also the reason why he wanted to save Yi Xian's life. Although the Jade Emperor wanted to kill Yi Xian with his own hands, he could only save Yi Xian's life today for the sake of his beloved woman. Although he was not willing to do this, Hu asked his beloved to beg him for Yi Xian's sake. At this moment, Yi Xian leaned in Fairy Guanghan's arms with a self-deprecating smile on his face. He did not need to ask or think to know that Fairy Guanghan had invited the Jade Emperor to save his life. However, once upon a time, did he, Yi Xian, need a woman to survive? Was this still Yi Xian? Was this still the proud Yi Xian who was not afraid of death and only wanted to step into the 9 heavens? No, this was not him. Even if he died in battle, he never needed to rely on a woman to survive because his dignity did not allow him to do so. It was impossible for him to do so. Chang Yi, you're too nosy. But I, Yi Xian, still want to thank you. Suddenly, Yi Xian bitterly smiled. His pale face flushed red as he slowly pushed away the moon fairy. His blood-soaked body stood tall and straight like a pine tree as he walked step by step towards Taoist Master Yuding. Jade Emperor, do you see that? He doesn't need your help at all. Perhaps I'll just have to kill him here and now. Perfected Yuding's face was ferocious as the immortal light of the great all-embracing heaven condensed slightly. Yi Xian, are you crazy? Fairy Guanghan rebuked in a trembling voice. She looked at Yi Xian with a sad expression. She had never thought that Yi Xian would still be so stubborn even at this point. The great Tao is rugged in this vast world. If I, Yi Xian, need a woman to save me to survive, I will look down on myself. Yi Xian turned around and smiled at Fairy Guanghan. However, his smile carried the expression of someone who fought against the heavens and the earth. It was as if when he stepped into the Blood Sea battlefield and faced the danger of death, he had never submitted. That year, he was only 14 years old. He revived in death, rose in silence, and fought desperately in the Blood Sea. He was afraid of death, but he didn't want to live without dignity. Even if he had to fight until his soul was scattered and he died today, he would have no regrets. Chang Yi, it's not that I don't want to help him. Since he wants to die, I can't help him. Jade Emperor smiled contemptuously and silently retreated into the distance. He looked at Yi Xian as if he was looking at a dead man. Go to hell. As the Jade Emperor retreated, Taoist Master Yuding let out a furious roar. The great Luo immortal light exploded forth and directly charged towards Yi Xian. It was obvious that this attack would definitely make Yi Xian disappear from this world. No! Fairy Guanghan cried out in grief. Her heart seemed to be torn apart at this moment. An extreme heartache appeared in her mind, and tears welled up in her eyes. She did not dare to look at Yi Xian's tragic death. There are laws in the world. Like a dream. Empty flowers are like a dream. Now that I have woken up, I have become a demon. Sutras were being chanted in the void of the heavens. The desolate chanting seemed to have crossed the river of time and come to the present world. It also made this world extremely different. The heavens could not be destroyed, and the earth could not be buried. Only the desolate chanting of the ancient times could be heard. This chanting seemed to come from outside the chaos, but also did not seem to exist in this world. That strange and unpredictable fluctuation bloomed in this world. The sky cracked open. Tongtian demonic light fell from the sky. The earth collapsed, and the mountains and rivers were destroyed into ashes. Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the void. The immortal light around him dissipated without a trace. Under the illumination of the Tongtian demonic light, his expression was calm and leisurely. Inexplicable seals were formed in his hands, and the aura around him became extremely obscure. My heart is dead. My soul is not extinguished. Gather the demonic chi of heaven and earth to destroy my ruined body. With the devouring of 10,000 demons as a guide. Break open the gate of the extraterritorial demon. Within the devilish light that pierced through the heavens and the earth, Yi Xian was chanting scriptures. His eyes gradually turned gray, and the dark light that exterminated all living things seemed to want to destroy this great world. Rumble. It was as if the water of the 9 nether yellow springs was flowing backward. It was as if all things in the world were being destroyed. A dark gate seemed to walk from the chaos to the present world, and gradually appeared between the heavens and the earth. This is. Such a scene made the Jade Emperor cry out in shock. It also made Perfected Yuding's expression change greatly. An extremely bad premonition rose in their hearts at the same time. An old legend. Outside the heavens and the earth, in the chaos, there was a mysterious place called the extraterritorial demon heaven. Hundreds of images of living beings gathered there, and it was filled with the sorrow of all living beings. All negative and dark emotions were filled there, and it evolved into a supreme heavenly demon that roamed in the chaos. It was an illusion of the heavenly demon that did not exist in the material world or the void. This was a power that did not belong to the three realms, and it was brimming with unfathomable power. It was said that if someone drew a heavenly demon into their body, they would be able to display the power of the heavenly demon, but their soul would also be devoured by the heavenly demon. This was a forbidden art, and the user of this art would never be able to reincarnate. However, this forbidden art had always been a legend, and it had never truly appeared in the three realms. But now, Yi Xian was using an obscure art that was extremely similar to this forbidden art, and it left the Jade Emperor and perfected Yu Ding flabbergasted. Heavenly demon entering the body. Yi Xian suddenly roared at the heavens. This savage and shrill howl seemed to want to destroy the world, and it caused the dark gate to slowly open. A boundless dark figure walked out of the gate, causing the world to tremble and hum. A forbidden art? Daoist Yu Ding cried out in fear as he frantically retreated. The mere appearance of this black figure was enough to make him feel an extreme dread, and the origin immortal power in his body began to violently ripple. Chapter 362. Not only was immortal Yu Ding retreating, but the Jade Emperor's expression was also solemn. He shot away with Fairy Guanghan. Although he had never experienced the terror of the Forbidden Heaven technique, the power contained in it was definitely not that simple. Yi Xian, have you gone mad? You'll die even if the heavenly demon enters your body, Yu Ding roared as he glared at Yi Xian with extreme hatred. Yu Ding had already understood that Yi Xian knew that he was doomed, so he was fighting with his life on the line. Even if the heavenly demon would devour him and cause him to never be reincarnated, he would drag him down with him before he died. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't reply, because this was all forced by Daoist Master Yu Ding. At this point, only this heaven-sealing great technique could make him fight with his life on the line. Even if his soul was destroyed and devoured by the heavenly demons in the end, he wouldn't hesitate. Rumble. The heavens could not be extinguished and the earth could not be buried. The heavenly demon had finally entered his body, and an unimaginable evil energy and demonic light began to rise from Yi Xian's body. He slowly stood up in the air, his cracked body rapidly mending. Heavenly demon slash. The six desires were emotionless, and the world was heartless. Yi Xian used his palm as a saber, and the demonic light of the Tongtian condensed in the sky, transforming into a black saber that spanned tens of thousands of li. As Yi Xian raised his saber, the black saber slashed down at Yu Ding. Immortal Advent Art. The power of the heavenly demon did not exist in the three realms, so Yu Ding did not dare to be careless. He used the origin immortal art, forming a massive palm to meet the black saber. Rumble. The heavens fell and the earth cracked. The darkness was boundless, and when the two supreme energies clashed, unparalleled ripples of energy spread out, scorching the world for tens of thousands of li kill. With the heavenly demon in his body, Yi Xian seemed to transform into a killing machine. He strode through the air, his fists carrying the power of the heavenly demon as they hurtled toward Yu Ding. Bang bang bang. The celestial demon illusion and the origin immortal light, when the two of them clashed, the world seemed to be on the verge of being pierced through. The two supreme powers rippling from their clash made one's soul feel like it was about to shatter. Thousands of miles away. The moon fairy bit her lips and looked at Yi Xian in a daze. When she saw Yi Xian's gray eyes, she murmured sadly, "Why? Why are you so stubborn? Even if the heavenly demon has entered your body, you won't let me save you?" Fairy Guanghan really could not understand. She had already begged the Jade Emperor to help, and the Jade Emperor had promised to save his life. Why was Yi Xian so stubborn and not accepting her help at all? In fact, Fairy Guanghan did not know that Yi Xian was an extremely proud person. He could lose and die, but to live in humiliation and for Fairy Guanghan to beg the Jade Emperor for his life was more painful than death. Therefore, Yi Xian would rather choose the heavenly demon to enter his body and fight Yu Ding to the death. Yi Xian would never accept Fairy Guanghan's help. Chang Yi, let's go. Don't look anymore. Let's not talk about whether he can kill Yu Ding. If he activates the Forbidden Sky technique and leads the heavenly demon into his body, he will be devoured by the heavenly demon and eventually dissipate between heaven and earth, the Jade Emperor said softly. No, let me see him one last time, Fairy Guanghan murmured. She just looked into the distance in a daze, as if she wanted to remember Yi Xian's face deeply in her mind. The heavens were in turmoil and everything was destroyed. This battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. The mountains and rivers were shattering and everything was withering. The light of the heavenly demon around Yi Xian was getting weaker and weaker. Although Yu Ding was Daluo Jingxian, he was not in a good state either. His hair was disheveled and his body was covered in blood. Obviously, he had suffered unimaginable injuries under the attack of the heavenly demon. Am I going to die? After all, external forces were just external forces. The power of the heavenly demon gradually weakened. Yi Xian's grayish-white eyes returned to normal. However, the backlash of the heavenly demon also came, causing his primordial spirit to explode. An extremely terrifying wave was devouring his primordial spirit, causing him unimaginable pain and torture. After all, Daluo Jingxian was Daluo Jingxian. Even if Yi Xian activated the Forbidden Sky technique, he could only fight to a draw with Yu Ding. It was obviously impossible to kill him. Yi Xian, allow this old man to send you on your way. When Yu Ding realized that Yi Xian's heavenly demon energy was dissipating, he was overjoyed. His origin immortal energy was on the verge of running out, so this was the best chance to kill Yi Xian in one blow. Boom! The origin immortal energy of the origin immortal came crashing down, but Yi Xian was currently suffering from the backlash of the heavenly demon and was simply incapable of blocking Yu Ding's final blow. Bzzzzz. At this critical moment, Yi Xian's chest began to glow. A formation diagram floated out, bursting with dazzling starlight that engulfed Yi Xian. The inverse immortal formation diagram? Yi Xian hoarsely muttered, his entire body in a daze. He had never imagined that the inverse immortal formation diagram that Lu Bai had left him would appear at the final moment of his life, seemingly protecting him. Those who obey are immortals, those who defy are mortals. Separate heaven and earth, turn immortals into mortals. Suddenly, a boundless voice came from the inverse immortal formation diagram. The inverse immortal formation diagram bloomed with extreme starlight and soared into the heavens, followed by an extremely terrifying scene. The luminous sun star rumbled and rotated. Streaks of starlight poured down like a long river from the 9 heavens, forming an immortal-defying array in this world. It even isolated the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, causing immortal Yu Ding's expression to change drastically. Immortal energy, my immortal energy, why is the immortal energy in my body dissipating? Yu Ding screamed in horror, not daring to believe what he was experiencing. What kind of formation is this? Kill! Without any hesitation, Yi Xian knew that this would be his last chance when the immortal-defying formation displayed its might. He endured the pain of the heavenly demon's backlash, gathered the last bit of the heavenly demon's power onto his right fist, and then punched towards Taoist Master Yu Ding. Plop! The fist light pierced through Yu Ding's chest, causing him to spit out a large amount of blood. The Daluo immortal light around him shattered. It was also at this time that Yi Xian exhausted the last bit of his strength and the backlash of the heavenly demon caused him to fall unconscious. The immortal-defying diagram enveloped him with starlight that covered the sky and instantly tore through the barrier of space and time, disappearing between heaven and earth. Puff! 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 At this moment, thousands of kilometers away, the Jade Emperor heaved a sigh of relief. A smile flashed across his eyes. Although the process was a little rough, Yi Xian still died in the end. No one could survive the heavenly demon's backlash. The Jade Emperor was very sure, and this made him very satisfied. However, the fairy of Guanghan beside him was in a daze and silent. She had fallen into an indescribable sadness. Chapter 363. In the resplendent starry sky, the luminous Milky Way. In the vast Milky Way, large stars rumbled and rotated according to an unchanging law. The ocean moved horizontally, the passage of time, and everything in the world withered. Within this vast river of time, countless extraordinary figures had risen from insignificance, yet they'd vanished in the river of time in the end. Perhaps, only the stars in the heavens had witnessed the traces of their existence. Yi Xian had fallen. It was as if a dazzling star had fallen from the vast Milky Way. Although it bloomed with the brightest starlight, it eventually turned into dust and no longer existed in the world. The three realms watched and sighed. Yi Xian had used the Forbidden Heaven technique to attract the heavenly demon into his body. The only outcome for him was death. Whether it was the Tongtian Demon King or the Immortals and Bodhisattvas, they were all convinced that Yi Xian had died. In the 33rd Celestial Court, the Jade Emperor issued an edict to the three realms. The East Emperor Yi Xian had violated the heavenly law and killed Yang Jian. It was a serious crime in the Celestial Court. Immortal Yuding had killed him on behalf of the heavens. The Weiyang Palace was sealed, and the dozens of demon kings were either demoted or sent to the lower realm. With the fall of Yi Xian, the Celestial Court returned to its former state. The three realms welcomed a rare period of peace. However, the legend of Yi Xian had become a topic of interest. This was because he had once been resplendent for a lifetime and could even be called the number one person below the great Luo Golden Immortal. If Yi Xian was given some time, when he stepped into the realm of the Daluo Jingxian, he would definitely become a respected existence. Unfortunately, before Yi Xian could grow up, he had already been annihilated in the world. Be it immortals, demons, bodhisattvas or Buddhas, Yi Xian's fall could only be attributed to his bad luck. If he had spared Yang Jian's life, how could he have ended up in such a state? Although no one had seen Yi Xian's corpse, everyone was convinced that he no longer existed in the world. Moreover, offending Immortal Yuding was equivalent to offending the 12 ancient golden immortals. Even if Yi Xian could survive, he would never be able to stand out. Otherwise, he would definitely be killed by the 12 ancient golden immortals. One Daluo Jingxian was already extremely terrifying. There were a total of 12 Daluo Jingxian. Even if Yi Xian was still alive in this world, he would only end up dead. Moreover, Yi Xian had attracted the heavenly demon into his body. There was no possibility of him surviving. Outside the 33 heavens, Immortal Yuding's face was pale as he knelt outside the Jade Palace. Clearly, he had not recovered from his injuries from the battle with Yi Xian. However, he had killed Yi Xian and asked him to come to the Jade Palace to beg for forgiveness. Pangu opened the heavens and Hongjun preached the Tao. The cycle of all things is in the heart. Only the heaven-destroying halberd and the immortal scripture are not in the operation of the heavenly Tao. This is also the biggest variable in the three realms. A sacred voice came from the Jade Palace. Master, Yi Xian is too much of a bully. Not only did he kill Erlang, but he also treated Chanism as nothing. This time, he died in the world. This is his own fault. Immortal Yuding kowtowed and said, "Ah, you can leave." A soft sigh came from the Jade Palace. "I will take my leave." Immortal Yuding got up and left. However, there was a look of confusion in his eyes. Nevertheless, he shook his head and rode a golden cloud towards the Jade Spring Mountain in the lower realm. Inside the Jade Palace, the aura of chaos lingered and the great Tao's laws flowed. Yuanshi Tianzuan sat cross-legged in the void. However, under the lingering aura of chaos, it was impossible to see his expression clearly. There was only a heavy aura surrounding him. The great Tao is 50 and the heavenly Tao is 49. This Yi Xian is the one who escaped. How could he be killed by you so easily? Yuding, Yuding. Even us saints do not dare to get involved with him. However, you have a grudge with him. I'm afraid that in this immeasurable calamity, you... Ah! Yuanshi Tianzuan sighed. His eyes turned as if he had seen through the changes of the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was as if he was deducing the supreme mysteries of heaven. However, in the end, he still did not gain anything. Difficult, difficult, difficult. Our Chanism should have such a great calamity. Junior Tongtian, you have waited for endless time. Finally, you can make our Chanism prosper. Yuanshi Tianzuan smiled bitterly. Although he was a saint, he also knew the Tao of heaven and earth's reincarnation. Back then, the great God investiture tribulation could be said to be a battle between the orthodoxies of the Chanism and Chanism. Tong Tian set up the Immortal slaying formation and faced the four saints alone. In the end, he was defeated. The Chanism lineage either died or was conferred as a god. It had completely declined over the past hundreds of thousands of years. However, with the reincarnation of heaven and earth and the rotation of all things, it was finally the turn of the Chanism lineage to take the old path of the Chanism lineage. However, Yuanshi Tianzuan was not willing to accept it. He had personally established the Chanism lineage. Even though Yi Xian was the main character of this immeasurable calamity, he was also an immortal saint. It was still unknown who would win in the end. Since we have already pushed this child to the opposite side of the Chanism, we can only kill him and find another person to face the calamity. Yuanshi Tianzuan murmured. He transformed into Wuji and merged into the void of chaos, hoping to deduce a chance of survival for the Chanism lineage. Aquamarine Palace. A black-robed Taoist sat cross-legged in the chaos. His extremely loud laughter could be heard. Senior brother, you are so conceited. Unfortunately, the Chanism has to face the calamity first. Let me see how much you have improved after endless time. Tong Tian was lawless. He was the most domineering saint. The battle between the Chanism and Chanism would eventually start between the two saints. In the boundless darkness, in the pitch-black prison, loneliness and darkness were the only colors. Yi Xian was lonely and helpless. He was in a daze in the prison. He could not see anything or hear anything. Only endless darkness accompanied him. This was his space of consciousness. It could also be said that it was his sea of consciousness. However, due to the backlash of the heavenly demon, his consciousness had also fallen into endless darkness. Yi Xian did not know where this place was. He also did not know if he was dead. However, if his soul had already dissipated, why did he still have his own consciousness and thoughts? Yi Xian did not know what form he was in now. He only knew that he might be dead, or he might not be dead. However, he could not walk out of this dark prison. It was as if this dark prison wanted to trap him here forever. He wandered in a daze without an end. Yi Xian was looking for a way out alone. Perhaps a day had passed, or perhaps a year had passed, or perhaps an era had passed. Yi Xian could not feel the passage of time. However, in this deathly silent environment, his consciousness became more and more blurry. Gradually, he seemed to have forgotten who he was. The darkness was boundless and endless. Only loneliness and eternity accompanied him. Yi Xian was no longer looking for a way out. He sat helplessly and blankly hugged his knees. His eyes stared straight ahead in a daze. It was as if he had lost his own thoughts and turned into a thing without intelligence. Chapter 364. Death might be terrifying, but the most terrifying thing was loneliness and silence. When a person was in a lonely and dark environment, it would drive a person crazy and gradually make a person's heart die. In the eternal darkness and endless loneliness, there was not even a trace of light in this dark prison, let alone a sound. Suddenly, a black fog appeared and slowly covered Yi Xian, as if it wanted to merge him into the darkness until he became one with this dark prison. Who am I? Like the beginning of the chaos, like the first ray of light at dawn, Yi Xian spoke in a daze. However, his voice was hoarse and confused, which made the dark prison slightly stagnate. I remember now. I am Yi Xian. I came from the human world and chased after Yang Jian for thousands of miles. I fought with Daluo Jinxian in the heaven realm and attracted the heavenly demon into my body. In the end, I died. But am I dead? Or am I not dead yet? The wisp of darkness lingered around Yi Xian. He stood up in the darkness and looked around the dark prison in a daze. A light slowly gathered in his eyes and faces appeared in his mind, causing the aura around him to become extremely chaotic. Yang Jian. Perfected Yuding. The Jade Emperor, and that meddlesome woman. Yang Jian's soul scattered. Perfected Yuding was ruthless and heartless. The Jade Emperor mocked and despised him. Of course, there was also the sorrowful fairy Guanghan. When these scenes flashed through Yi Xian's mind, he clenched his fists slightly and an unimaginably terrifying wave surrounded him. Buzz! His perplexed eyes gradually became cold and sinister. The wisp of darkness that twined around his body merged into his forehead. He sinisterly looked around this dark prison, and a cruel and sinister smile appeared on his face. So, the legend is true. The old legend. After using the Forbidden Heaven technique, although one could obtain the support of the heavenly demon's power, one would also be devoured by the heavenly demon. This was a power that did not exist in the three realms. In the end, one's soul would be scattered and he would die. However, according to legend, the heavenly demon energy was the manifestation of all living beings in the void of chaos. It was born from the convergence of the dark and negative emotions of all living beings. It could be said to be a kind of energy of the laws of chaos. Yi Xian was a man of boundless darkness. He had long abandoned the so-called benevolence, righteousness, and morality. He was the representative of darkness. Although he had activated the heavenly demon's possession and suffered the pain of the heavenly demon's backlash, he did not die. However, the power of the heavenly demon had turned into a dark prison that trapped his soul. If he could not break out of the prison, his soul would be trapped here forever. Break! Yi Xian's primordial spirit was glowing. It was a kind of boundless dark light. He swung his fists and smashed them violently at the dark prison, but it didn't cause any waves. Of the same origin, darkness engenders each other. Yi Xian did not die from the heavenly demon's backlash because his heart was filled with the world's most negative emotions. He had long become one with the heavenly demon's power. This was also the reason why he could survive. However, the dark prison was formed by the heavenly demon's power. The power in his soul was of the same origin as the dark prison. Naturally, he could not break out of the prison's seal. Perhaps it was a day, perhaps it was 10 years. Yi Xian seemed to have fallen into madness. He constantly bombarded the dark prison in an attempt to break out. Even when he used up the last of his strength, the dark prison did not budge. This made him realize that no matter how he bombarded it, his strength had long become one with the heavenly demon's power. It was impossible for him to break out of the prison. What should he do? Yi Xian sat in the prison, bitterly thinking of a way to break out. He did not know how much time had passed, but he could not think of a way to break out of the prison. The darkness was silent and lonely. Yi Xian's thoughts became more and more chaotic. In his chaotic thoughts, the faces of many people flashed through his mind. Immortal Yuding's overbearing and ruthless, Jade Emperor's sneer and ridicule, and Fairy Guanghan's sorrowful eyes. He killed Immortal Yuding, annihilated the 12 ancient golden immortals, killed Jade Emperor and seized his position as Celestial Emperor and Fairy Guanghan. Unwillingness, resentment, and extremely cold killing intent constantly surrounded Yi Xian. All kinds of dark and negative emotions were growing. He did not want to be trapped in the dark prison to death. He would never forget the Jade Emperor's condescending gaze at him. It was as if he was mocking him for asking a woman to beg for his life. If he wanted to kill Daoist Master Yuding, then he wanted to kill the Jade Emperor even more. Because the Moon Fairy's request for help from the Jade Emperor was the greatest humiliation to him, Yi Xian. This caused him to deeply remember this humiliation in his heart. The two of them could not be said to be rivals in love, because Yi Xian had never loved Fairy Guanghan. He was only interested in her body. He had long regarded her as a woman that only he could play with. A tyrannical emotion grew in Yi Xian's heart. Not only did he want to break out of the dark prison, but he also wanted to trample on Jade Emperor in the future. Suddenly, under the growth of all kinds of dark emotions, Yi Xian's eyes lit up. He looked around the dark prison as if he had thought of something. The dark prison is formed by the power of the heavenly demon. This is just a way of existence of energy. If I can refine the power of the heavenly demon, will I be able to escape? Yi Xian's reverse thinking made him happy. He felt that this method would definitely work. Yi Xian's principle of doing things was to act as soon as he thought of it. He sat cross-legged in the dark prison. His primordial spirit seemed to have turned into a black hole. The undying immortal scripture circulated violently, forming an extremely powerful suction force. It also caused the dark prison to undergo an extremely shocking change. Buzz! The dark prison was shaking. Strands of heavenly demon power were produced out of thin air and slowly absorbed into Yi Xian's primordial spirit. This also made Yi Xian overjoyed. He knew that this method was indeed useful. Although this absorption was extremely slow, it was indeed developing in a good direction. This also allowed Yi Xian to focus on circulating the undying immortal scripture and slowly absorb the heavenly demon power produced by the dark prison. The power of the heavenly demon gathered the negative emotions of all living beings and refined them into Yi Xian's primordial spirit. This was an extremely dangerous action. Perhaps it would also turn Yi Xian into a killing machine. However, Yi Xian had no other choice. He couldn't care less, because only by breaking out of the dark prison could his primordial spirit return to his body and reappear in the three realms. Furthermore, Yi Xian had an extremely strong sense of urgency. His primordial spirit was trapped here, and he didn't know where his body was in the outside world. If he fell into the hands of the Chan school, he would probably suffer an unimaginable calamity. Time passed bit by bit. Yi Xian also merged into the boundless darkness. However, the strands of heavenly demon power that fused into his body also caused the space to become silent. But even if he died, he would die in battle in this boundless prairie and would not become a captive of the warhound's country. Little brat Zhao Go, why aren't you surrendering? Could it be that you want this general to kill you personally? In all directions, there was a sea of people. Several 100,000 warhound soldiers surrounded Zhao Go in the center. A warhound's general came out on his horse, looking at Zhao Go with a cruel look in his eyes. "Ah, Muta, if you want to kill me, then kill me. If you want to make this highness your prisoner, you're just dreaming." Zhao Go pointed his sword at the warhound's general, speaking in a low and cold voice. "Zhao Go, you really are pitiful. Could it be that you don't want to know how I found out about you appearing here?" The warhound's general said with a cold laugh. "Zhao Sun." Zhao Go's face flickered as he thought of something, and he clenched his teeth so hard that they threatened to shatter. Zhao Sun, the small holy kingdom's crown prince, was also the heir to the throne. In order to fight for the throne, the two of them had already lost their brotherly feelings. Today, he had personally led the army, so it must have been Zhao Sun who sold his information to the warhound's country, causing him to fall into this situation. Although he understood everything, it was already too late. Zhao Go knew that he was facing a dead end and a trace of despair flashed in his eyes. "Zhao Go, you can be considered an ambitious person, but it's a pity that you will die here today. You should end your own life here," the warhound's general said in a low voice. "In this boundless world, soldiers dying in battle." Zhao Go revealed a bitter smile. He knew that perhaps this was his best choice, it was much better than dying under the enemy's blade. Zhang! A sword was pulled out and placed across his throat. Since he had already reached this point, Zhao Go really had no other choice. "Your Highness, you can't." The soldiers all had bitter expressions. There was even someone who grabbed the sword in Zhao Go's hand, clearly wanting to stop Zhao Go from ending his own life here. "This Highness has let you all down. We will still be brothers in the underworld." Zhao Go slowly pushed aside the soldier in front of him. The sword in his hand had already pierced through his skin. As long as he used a bit of strength, he would be able to pierce his own throat and die here. This. Who is this person? Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out, causing Zhao Gou's expression to slightly change as he looked towards the source of the sound. A black-robed man covered in blood was crawling in a patch of weeds. A large amount of weeds covered him, making it impossible to see his face. However, the specks of demonic light surrounding him caused the void to distort slightly. At the same time, the dark prison was boundless. When the final strand of demonic light entered Yi Xian's soul, the dark prison began to collapse inch by inch. A tyrannical killing intent filled Yi Xian's consciousness, causing his soul to become as black as ink. Roar! Like the roar of a ferocious beast, like the roar of an evil dragon, an inhuman voice came out from Yi Xian's mouth. The dark prison finally collapsed without a trace, and his soul returned to his physical body. When the soul and physical body combined into one, an extremely terrifying thing happened. Suddenly, Yi Xian opened his eyes. His pupils were pitch black and terrifying, and they were rumbling at this moment, as though they wanted to suck in the souls of all living beings. This caused Zhao Gou and the other soldiers to gasp in shock. This. Zhao Gou was not stupid. Zhao Gou wasn't stupid. Although he didn't know who Yi Xian was, the black light surrounding him gave him the urge to kneel down and kowtow. Even his soul was trembling at this moment. Junior Zhao Gou is the second prince of a small holy kingdom. Today, I was ambushed by the Warhound's country and my life is in danger. Please save this junior's life, senior. I will definitely not forget senior's kindness in the future. Zhao Gou's eyes turned, and he directly knelt down and kowtowed to Yi Xian, lowering his posture to an extremely low level. Zhao Gou was not stupid. He was a golden core cultivator, but he could not sense Yi Xian's cultivation level. Yi Xian was at least at the nascent soul stage. Although his aura was not that of a righteous cultivator, he was now in a life and death crisis. Only this person who suddenly appeared in front of him could save his life. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was unmoved by Zhao Gou's pleas, because he was currently in an extremely tyrannical mood. The dark prison was formed by the demonic power. Although he had escaped, he had also fused the demonic power into his soul. At this moment, his heart was filled with an extremely tyrannical mood, and he had the urge to slaughter the world. However, Yi Xian was forcefully restraining himself, hoping to suppress these negative emotions. If he were to really start a massacre, he'd probably turn into a killing machine as well. Where did this thief come from? Die! Suddenly, the Warhound's general slashed out with his blade, bringing a 100-meter-long blade light towards Yi Xian. Clearly, in his mind, Yi Xian was one of Zhao Gou's people. Chapter 366. Roar! The world was in chaos as a vicious aura covered the sky. When the Warhound's general slashed out, it was like heavenly thunder stirring up the flames of the earth. It completely ignited the dark and negative emotions that Yi Xian had been suppressing. Hong long long. The endless sky was filled with boundless darkness and there were tens of thousands of blood-red lightning bolts flashing in the sky. The 100,000 miles of grassland wildly shook and the earth cracked. Dust flew everywhere and the space within the 100,000 miles was distorted in a terrifying manner. Yi Xian's brows drooped, making it impossible for others to see his expression. However, when he slowly raised his head, his terrifying eyes were as red as blood, and an aura that could annihilate all living things revolved within his eyes. Pang! With just a single look from Yi Xian, the Warhound's general did not even have time to let out a pitiful cry as he exploded into a bloody mist that scattered in the void. This scene shocked the hundreds of thousands of Warhound soldiers and made Zhao Gou and the other soldiers fall into a deathly silence. They could only look at Yi Xian's back with a look of horror on their faces. Die! With a single word, all living things were destroyed. A simple word came from all directions, but it brought with it a sea of blood. This tragic scene was just too shocking. Pang, pang, pang. The void collapsed and demonic light filled the sky. The heavenly demonic light that was destroyed inch by inch spread across the 100,000 miles of grassland. The hundreds of thousands of Warhound's soldiers gave pitiful cries as they were destroyed one by the heavenly demonic light. The exploding blood mist filled the sky and a nauseating bloody smell made Zhao Guo and the other soldiers want to vomit. All living things were destroyed and the world was silent. Yi Xian did not even need to make a move. Just the heavenly demonic light that he released was enough to create a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses. He was bathed in the bloody mist that filled the sky. His arms were slowly stretched out, and there was an intoxicated look on his face. Those scarlet and terrifying eyes were even more terrifying and intimidating. Pang! Suddenly, the heavenly demon light around Yi Xian disappeared, and he powerlessly fell to the ground. However, the blood rain that drifted for 50,000 kilometers was still sprinkling down. This also allowed Zhao Guo and the others to know that they weren't dreaming, and that the scene that had just happened was real. He destroyed the Warhound's army of hundreds of thousands by himself. Looking at Yi Xian's unconscious face, Zhao Guo's entire body trembled, his complexion pale to the extreme. He could hardly believe his own eyes. According to Zhao Guo's knowledge, it was impossible for a transcending tribulation cultivator to kill an army of hundreds of thousands. This was the method of an immortal, and it was a difference in the level of life. Could he be an immortal? Zhao Guo muttered to himself in shock, but his eyes were moving slightly. He looked at Yi Xian as if he were looking at a rare treasure. Your Highness, let's leave quickly. Regardless of whether this person is an immortal or not, just based on his cruel methods, if we wait until he wakes up, perhaps even your Highness will suffer a great calamity of life and death. One of the generals advised with a trembling voice. Yes, your Highness, this person must be a demonic cultivator. We'd better leave quickly, another general continued to persuade. Clearly, Yi Xian's cruel methods were too terrifying, causing these mortals to be extremely terrified. They didn't want to have any contact with Yi Xian at all. Unfortunately, Zhao Guo was an extremely ambitious person. Although he was also afraid of Yi Xian's cruel methods, he yearned for Yi Xian's power even more. Amidst his fear, there was also a hint of extreme excitement. If he could keep Yi Xian by his side, it would be a piece of cake for him to destroy the 10 nations, let alone inherit the throne of the small holy empire. When this thought arose in Zhao Guo's mind uncontrollably, his face flushed and his body trembled with excitement. He finally made an extremely crazy decision. Someone, prepare the horse. Zhao Guo waved his hand and asked a soldier to bring over a warhorse. He then went straight to Yi Xian's side and carried Yi Xian's body before placing him on the warhorse. Your Highness, are you crazy? Such a scene caused all the soldiers to cry out in shock. Their gazes towards Zhao Guo were filled with extreme horror. It was no wonder that the soldiers reacted that way. After all, they didn't know Yi Xian's background or origin. If they brought him back to the small holy empire, he would definitely destroy the small holy empire if he wakes up and starts a massacre. No one is allowed to spread what happened today. If I find out that anyone leaked what happened today, don't blame me for disregarding the relationship between the ruler and my subjects, Zhao Guo said in an extremely cold voice as he looked around at the soldiers gloomily. Looking at Zhao Guo's gloomy face, the soldiers looked at each other, but they had no choice but to smile bitterly. They were all Zhao Guo's trusted subordinates and naturally had to follow his lead. Hence, they nodded helplessly. Small Holy Empire, Imperial Palace. Yi Xian was lying on a dragon bed. However, his face was twisted to the extreme. From time to time, wisps of demonic light would streak across his face. Two palace maids with slender figures and beautiful appearances were using fragrant handkerchiefs to wipe away the cold sweat on Yi Xian's forehead. The two palace maids were already used to seeing this mysterious young man brought back by the second prince. Yi Xian had been unconscious for half a year. It wasn't that he didn't know what was going on around him, but that he was constantly suppressing the negative emotions in his soul. Otherwise, he would have woken up long ago. Yi Xian also knew where he was and that Zhao Go was the second prince of the small holy empire. He didn't need to guess to know a thing or two about Zhao Go's ambitions. In a pool filled with steam, Yi Xian was bathing and changing his clothes under the care of 2 palace maids. After half a year, the 2 palace maids had already gotten used to it and weren't as shy as before. However, the 2 palace maids were very puzzled. They didn't know who they were serving and why the second prince valued him so much. Suddenly, the steam rose and the void froze. Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. A wisp of black light streaked across his eyes. The 2 palace maids who were washing his body were stunned. The atmosphere became somewhat stagnant. A black robe floated out of summer space. In the flickering light, Yi Xian's black robe suddenly disappeared from the pool. When he reappeared, he was already sitting cross-legged on the bed. My lord, you're awake." The 2 palace maids spoke shyly and hurriedly covered their exposed bodies. Their faces were flushed with shyness. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't look at the 2 palace maids. Clearly, the 2 palace maids' beauty was no different from a pink skeleton in his eyes. After all, Yi Xian had once played with the moon fairy. Why would he care about 2 mortal women? "Go and call your master to see me," Yi Xian said calmly. He had the dignity of a superior. The 2 palace maids didn't dare to neglect him. They tidied up their clothes and quickly left. Not long after, a series of hurried footsteps came from outside the palace. When the door was gently pushed open, Zhao Go walked in wearing a dragon robe. When he saw that Yi Xian had regained consciousness, his face flushed red. "Junior Zhao Go greets senior." Zhao Go took 3 steps forward and quickly walked towards Yi Xian. He didn't have the slightest bit of the dignity of the royal family and directly knelt before Yi Xian. His posture was extremely humble. Chapter 367. They looked at each other indifferently. Yi Xian calmly looked at Zhao Go kneeling at his feet, showing no intention of letting him rise. As time passed, large amounts of sweat began to appear on Zhao Go's forehead. It was obvious that Zhao Go felt extremely uncomfortable in this silent atmosphere. However, he knew that the person he was facing was definitely not immortal. Before Yi Xian told him to get up, he could only quietly kneel there. The sun was setting and night had fallen. Candles had already been lit all around the imperial palace, but the 2 of them had already fallen into darkness. "Rise!" Suddenly, Yi Xian's calm voice caused Zhao Go's face to light up with joy. He struggled to get up from the ground, but kneeling on the ground for a long time caused his body to become unstable and his legs to become numb. "I have yet to ask for senior's name." In the pitch-black illusion, Zhao Go bowed with a flattering smile, but there was a trace of nervousness in his eyes. Logically speaking, as the second prince of a small holy empire, he was born with the dignity of the imperial family. Even when facing cultivators from large sects, he could be neither servile nor overbearing. But for some reason, when facing this mysterious black-clothed man, he felt an extremely powerful sense of oppression. He didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. "I can see from your eyes that you are an extremely ambitious person, and you are definitely not a kind person. I know exactly what you are thinking in your heart." Yi Xian didn't care about Zhao Go's thoughts, but he was currently in a small holy empire. In order to cover his tracks, this Zhao Go would be of great use to him. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Zhao Go's expression changed slightly, but he could only smile flatteringly and bow. "Senior is wise. As long as you can help Junior seize the throne, Junior will definitely not forget Senior's great kindness." Zhao Go was a smart person, and Yi Xian liked to talk to smart people. Zhao Go wanted to borrow his strength to seize the throne, while he would hide in a small holy empire for a while. This could be considered a mutually beneficial transaction. 3 days. I will only give you 3 days. After 3 days, launch a coup and seize the throne. At that time, I will lend you a hand, Yi Xian said calmly. Coup? Hearing Yi Xian's words, Zhao Go's expression changed greatly. His voice trembled as he said, Senior may not know, but my elder brother, Zhao Sun, is in charge of the capital's 30,000 imperial guards, and imperial father has, before Zhao Go could finish speaking, Yi Xian waved his hand, remember, before absolute power, everything in this world is nothing. This is your only chance. You may leave. Yi Xian didn't give Zhao Go any time to explain, because in his eyes, a mere mortal kingdom could be annihilated with a single finger. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to hide in the small holy kingdom, he wouldn't have bothered with Zhao Go. Junior will take his leave. Yi Xian's at the same time, at Yi Xian, at the end of it of Xian's, of course, his to his of him. In the palace. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on his bed. A sliver of moonlight shone through the window, illuminating his face. He gazed at the lunar star in the sky, and the image of the goddess of lunar frost appeared in his mind. I wonder how that stupid woman is doing now, Yi Xian muttered to himself. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He had endured the backlash of the celestial demon and suppressed the dark, negative emotions in his soul. He had finally reappeared in the world. However, he could not appear in the three realms. Yi Xian knew very well that everyone believed him to be dead. If he appeared in the three realms, enlightened Master Yu Ding and the 12 golden immortals alone would not let him live. Yi Xian was a very cautious person, and a person who cherished his life. He would never place himself in danger, but he could not continue to hide like this. He needed to refine a trump card that could truly stand up to Daluo Jingxian. Buzz! His palm and fingers brushed the air, and starlight flickered. The inverse immortal array diagram appeared and floated in the void. However, the inverse immortal array diagram had long been cracked. It was obvious that it had suffered great damage in the battle with enlightened Master Yu Ding. Brother Bai, if it weren't for your inverse immortal array diagram, I'm afraid I would have died that day. Yi Xian held the inverse immortal array diagram in his hand. A touch of sadness flashed across his eyes. He really did not expect that it would be the inverse immortal array diagram that saved his life when his life was in danger. Lu Bai was a prodigy of the ages. He was able to create this unprecedented formation with the body of a mortal. Back then, Yi Xian had only thought of the inverse immortal array diagram as a memento of Lu Bai. He had never thought that the inverse immortal array diagram would have such great power. Not only had it saved his life, but it had also become his only means to stand up to Daluo Jingxian. Those who obey are immortals, those who defy are mortals. Across the sky and the earth, immortals become mortals. Yi Xian held the inverse immortal array diagram in his hand. As he murmured, the inverse immortal array diagram shone with bits of starlight. Yi Xian continued to observe the inverse immortal array diagram in his hand. He even sent his consciousness into it. After a few hours, his consciousness returned. The 8 gates of life and death. Across the sky and the earth, heaven and earth are reversed, and all living things are reincarnated. What a great inverse immortal array! Yi Xian sighed. He was deeply impressed by Lu Bai's talent. It's a pity that this inverse immortal array diagram was created with mortal materials. Although the array is unprecedented, its material is ultimately inferior. If it could be paired with 9 heaven crystal jade, 10,000-year cold iron stone, and other rare treasures of heaven and earth, it would definitely be able to unleash the unparalleled power of the inverse immortal array diagram. Yi Xian put away the inverse immortal array diagram. His voice was low and deep as he made a decision in his heart. The inverse immortal array diagram was his only means to fight against Daluo Jingxian. He wanted to reforge the inverse immortal array diagram and gather all the rare treasures of the world into one furnace. He wanted to let Lu Bai's peerless array truly show its true power. However, the first thing he needed to do now was to hide his tracks and help Zhao Go seize the throne. Only then could Zhao Go help him gather the materials to reforge the inverse immortal array diagram. 3 days later. It had to be said that Zhao Go was indeed a formidable person. His style of doing things was somewhat similar to Yi Xian's. It could be said that he was fighting with his back against the wall. He directly launched a mutiny in the capital of the small Holy Kingdom. Logically speaking, Zhao Gou's foundation was not stable and he did not have the guts to launch a mutiny. However, who asked him to have Yi Xian's support? When he returned to his residence that day, he did not sleep for the entire night. When he thought of the scene of Yi Xian slaughtering hundreds of thousands of warhound soldiers, he made a decision. He would follow Yi Xian's instructions and prepare to seize the throne. On this day, in the capital of the small Holy Kingdom, all the citizens were hiding in their homes. Zhao Gou led 10,000 soldiers to fight with his elder brother Zhao Sun in the city. The drifting blood spilled over every inch of the capital and it was unknown how many soldiers died tragically. Since ancient times, the royal family was the most ruthless. They fought among themselves for power and profit. For the so-called throne, even father and son would turn against each other. Chapter 368. In the palace of the Minor Saint Empire. The current emperor, Zhao Zhe, was already old. When he heard that Zhao Gou had launched a coup to seize his throne, Zhao Zhe was furious. He didn't expect his son to be so crazy. Kill! A loud battle cry came from outside the palace. A eunuch came to report in a panic. Your Majesty, the two princes have already led their troops outside the palace. What should we do now? Unfilial son, I am not dead yet, how dare they? Zhao Zhe's face was red as he staggered out of the palace with the help of the eunuch. In the palace, Zhao Gou's face was cold as he led thousands of soldiers to confront his brother Zhao Sun. However, Zhao Sun had 10,000 soldiers behind him, so he obviously had a great advantage in numbers. Second brother, I really didn't expect that you would be so stupid. Where did you get the courage to start a mutiny with just a few thousand soldiers? Zhao Sun mocked, looking at Zhao Gou as if he was looking at a dead man. Zhao Gou laughed wildly. There was no fear in his eyes. He said, Big brother, if I were you, I would surrender now. That way, I can still keep my life. Zhao Sun knew his brother very well. If he didn't have some confidence, his brother wouldn't have launched a coup so recklessly. Obviously, he had a great trump card in his hand. Although he was a little afraid of Zhao Gou, Zhao Sun also had his own trump card. He looked at Zhao Gou with a hint of mockery. All of you, stop! Suddenly, when the two princes were confronting each other, the emperor of the Minor Saint Empire, Zhao Zhe, staggered out with the help of the eunuchs. This made the two princes' expressions change slightly, but neither of them spoke first. Unfilial son, I am not dead yet. How dare you do such a disgraceful thing? Zhao Zhe shouted at the two of them angrily. Father, it was second brother who launched a coup to seize your throne. How dare I do such a disgraceful thing? Zhao Sun bowed to his father. Is what your brother said true? Zhao Zhe asked Zhao Gou with a livid face. Imperial father, you are already old, and it is time for you to abdicate. If you had passed the throne to me earlier, how could today's events have occurred? Zhao Gou said bluntly. Unfilial son. After receiving Zhao Gou's reply, Zhao Zhe angrily roared. It was obvious that he was greatly angered by Zhao Gou. Imperial father, there is no need to be angry. Once I capture second brother, I will hand him over to Imperial father for punishment. Zhao Sun stepped forward and waved his hand, causing 10,000 soldiers to surround Zhao Gou and the others. They looked at Zhao Gou with mocking expressions. Second brother, it doesn't matter what trump card you have that allowed you to launch a mutiny. Today, you will definitely die. Zhao Sun sneered in disdain. He turned around and looked at an old man in green. He bowed and said, Immortal Master Lin, you have made your move. Your Highness, there's no need for such formalities. The old man was holding a horsetail whisk and was surrounded by spirit force. He was a transcending tribulation cultivator. When Zhao Gou saw this person, his expression changed slightly. Ancient Cloud Sect's Lin Tianhe. Zhao Gou cried out in shock. Immeasurable heavenly sovereign. Lin Qianhe bowed and said, "It seems that your highness knows me. In this case, your highness, please allow yourself to be captured so that I don't have to do it myself." Second brother, you didn't expect this, did you? Immortal Master Lin has already been conferred the title of Immortal Protector of the Small Holy Empire. It's not too late for you to surrender now. Zhao Sun sneered, his eyes filled with confidence. At this moment, Zhao Guo's expression was very ugly. He really didn't expect that his big brother could invite Lin Qianhe. This made him feel extremely vexed. All of a sudden, a slender figure appeared in front of Zhao Guo. With the appearance of this person, heaven and earth became extremely stagnant. An unimaginable fluctuation spread between heaven and earth. Senior. When he saw the person beside him, Zhao Guo was overjoyed and bowed to Yi Xian. This fellow Taoist is. Yi Xian's appearance also stunned Lin Qianhe. His eyes froze and an indescribable sense of horror rose from the bottom of his heart. It was as if he wasn't facing a human at all, but an unimaginably terrifying immortal. Immortal? Yes, an immortal. Lin Qianhe was an immortal cultivator in the tribulation stage. He had seen immortals before. Although he couldn't see Yi Xian's cultivation, he was very sure that Yi Xian was definitely an immortal. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given him such a terrifying sense of oppression. The most important thing was that the appearance of the black-robed young man in front of him gave him a very familiar feeling. He seemed to have seen this person somewhere before, but he couldn't remember where at the moment. This person is. Lin Qianhe's body was drenched in cold sweat. He kept trying to recall something. After a few seconds, a light flashed across his mind as if he had remembered something. Hiss! Suddenly, Lin Qianhe sucked in a breath of cold air. His body trembled at this moment and his ruddy face turned pale. He finally remembered where he had seen this appearance before. The East Pole Emperor? Wasn't this the East Pole Emperor's appearance? It was in the Guyan sect. When the Celestial Court issued the Imperial Jade Slip, the East Pole Emperor's appearance was drawn on the Jade Slip. The Celestial Court had even ordered all the sects in the mortal world to report to the Celestial Court immediately if anyone discovered the East Pole Emperor's corpse. However, Lin Qianhe had never thought that the East Pole Emperor had died at the hands of perfected Yuding. Why had he appeared before him, alive and well? Lin Qianhe didn't dare to think about it, nor did he dare to ask. However, he was already drenched in cold sweat. He tried his best to suppress his panic and pretend that he didn't know Yi Xian. This was because Lin Qianhe was no fool. Since the East Pole Emperor was still alive and was hiding in the palace, he didn't want anyone to know his identity. If the East Pole Emperor discovered that Lin Qianhe had seen through his identity, Lin Qianhe would definitely die a tragic death. Your Highness, the matters of the mortal world have nothing to do with this humble Taoist. This humble Taoist is powerless to help. Farewell. Lin Qianhe didn't dare to look at Yi Xian at all. He did his best to pretend to be calm and bowed before slowly walking out of the palace. This scene caused Zhao Sun's face to be stunned, and he only recovered from his shock after a few breaths of time. However, before he could speak to persuade them to stay, an indifferent and emotionless voice slowly resounded. Since you've come, there's no need to leave. Wang! Heaven and earth were sealed and space froze. Before Lin Qianhe could leave the palace, the entire place had been sealed. Lin Qianhe's face turned ghastly pale. He knew that the East Pole Emperor had seen through him. Your Highness, please spare me. I'm only passing by. I would never dare to spread your news. Lin Qianhe's body trembled. He no longer dared to put on an act. He directly knelt on the ground and begged Yi Xian tearfully. Chapter 369. The Zhao father and son did not know who the emperor was. However, the Zhao father and son knew that Yi Xian's background was not simple to make Lin Qianhe act so humbly before Yi Xian. Among them, Zhao Sun was the most terrified, and a look of despair flashed across his eyes. Buzz! The world was filled with killing intent and blood rained down. Yi Xian did nothing, but Lin Tianhe exploded into a cloud of blood mist and no longer existed between heaven and earth. Dong! With a point of his finger, immortal light sprinkled down, and the world was distorted to the extreme. The 10,000 soldiers under Zhao Sun's command were turned into dust, and the world became deathly silent. Yi Xian was indifferent, emotionless, and silent. These ants in the mortal world couldn't arouse the slightest bit of interest in Yi Xian. He didn't even want to waste his breath and directly killed them all. Suddenly turning around, Yi Xian drifted away, but his low voice fell into Zhao Gou's ears. If you want to successfully ascend the throne, this father and son pair will be your greatest restraint. I will only give you 1 day to stabilize your country, and then come see me. I have something to tell you. Looking at Yi Xian's departing figure, Zhao Gou was speechless, and his face was flushed. He was extremely agitated at this moment, because Yi Xian gave him the feeling that he was too powerful. Strong, domineering, and lawless. This was the attitude that Yi Xian displayed. It was as if everything in the world was just an ant in his eyes, and he would not be moved in the slightest. Lin Tianhe was dead, and so were his subordinates. Zhao Sun was now alone, and the rest of the matter became very simple. It was said that the royal family was the most heartless. This sentence was well reflected in Zhao Gou's case. Zhao Sun was dismembered in the struggle for the throne, and his father, Zhao Zhe, was imprisoned deep in the palace. In the dead of night, he took poison and committed suicide. As for whether he really committed suicide, anyone with a discerning eye knew what had happened. When the dust settled, Zhao Gou finally ascended the throne as he wished, becoming the new monarch of the small holy empire. It was just that he had obtained his throne by killing his brother and father. However, under the suppression of Zhao Gou's martial power, these negative rumors had completely disappeared. When the sun rose the next day, Zhao Gou did not immediately hold the coronation ceremony. Instead, he went to visit Yi Xian alone because he knew that everything he had now was given to him by Yi Xian. Since Yi Xian was able to help him seize the throne, he naturally had some requests for him. Thus, he did not dare to be negligent. He had been waiting outside the palace where Yi Xian lived for a long time. Come in. When Yi Xian's voice sounded, Zhao Gou quickly entered the palace and saw Yi Xian sitting cross-legged in the void. His body was emitting immortal light. This was also why he knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Xian. Junior Zhao Gou kowtows to senior. In the face of Zhao Gou's humble attitude, Yi Xian nodded slightly and said, "Vicious and merciless. You killed your brother and father. You can be considered an ambitious person." Hearing Yi Xian's words, Zhao Gou smiled flatteringly. He did not dare to show the slightest trace of anger on his face. He just knelt on the ground and listened to Yi Xian's teachings. Buzz! A white jade slip quietly appeared in front of Zhao Gou. Zhao Gou suspiciously caught it in his hand. This jade slip contains the materials I need. I don't care what method you use, but you must find them for me within 10 years. Zhao Gou did not dare to delay. He quickly checked the jade slip, but when he saw the materials recorded in the jade slip, his breathing stopped and his face became extremely bitter. Senior, this 10,000-year crystal jade is easy to find, but this outer frost iron is something that can only be found by chance. Junior. Zhao Gou wanted to say something, but stopped. His face clearly showed that he was in a difficult position. 10 years. In 10 years, I want you to gather all the materials. If I don't see these things in 10 years, there is no need for you and your country to continue existing. Yi Xian said ruthlessly. Clearly, he was not just saying it for fun. If Zhao Gou could not gather all the materials, his country would be destroyed and he would die. Zhao Gou had already experienced Yi Xian's methods, and he deeply understood how terrifying Yi Xian could be. This made Zhao Gou's forehead drip with cold sweat. He patted his chest and promised that he would gather all the materials for Yi Xian. Zhao Gou left in fear. Even the coronation ceremony was hastily held. Afterward, He mobilized the entire country to gather the materials for Yi Xian. The minor Holy Empire was, after all, just a mortal country. There were 9 other countries spying on it, and they had been attacking each other for 10,000 years. 10 years. It was neither long nor short. In the eyes of immortals, 10 years was just the blink of an eye. But to Zhao Go, these 10 years were extremely important. He enslaved the common people, wantonly recruited soldiers, and started the War of the 10 Countries. In these 10 years, the minor Holy Empire was completely immersed in a reign of terror. He mobilized the entire country to plunder the resources of other countries. For a time, Zhao Go gained the title of a tyrant. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Zhao Go went from a young man to a middle-aged man. But 10 years of war made him shine with an iron-blooded killing intent. He had already grown into an emperor, using war to support war, slaughtering the world. In just 10 years, under Zhao Go's iron-blooded methods, a total of 5 countries were destroyed. He also obtained a large amount of precious materials. On this day, 10 years later, Zhao Go once again came to pay a visit to Yi Xian. He had also finally completed the task that Yi Xian had given him. "Senior, this junior did not disappoint you. I have finally gathered all the materials. Please inspect them." Zhao Go was wearing an emperor's robe. There was a large pile of materials behind him. Obviously, they were the result of his 10 years of war. He had also spent a lot of effort. Now that he had finally completed the task, he felt relieved. "You have done well." Yi Xian waved his palm and fingers in the air. He directly put the materials for refining the inverse immortal formation diagram into the summary space. A blood-red light flashed across his eyes. With these materials, he could reforge the inverse immortal formation diagram. This would also give him the means to fight against Daluo Jingxian. "I will be in seclusion for a period of time. It may be 100 years or 1,000 years. If nothing major happens, today may be the last time we meet," Yi Xian said calmly. "Go. Unless your descendants encounter a calamity that exterminates their clan, don't come here to disturb me." Yi Xian waved his sleeve and let Zhao Go leave the palace. At the same time, Yi Xian's palace was shrouded by clouds and mist, no longer visible as immortal. Zhao Go bitterly smiled as he looked at the palace that was covered by clouds. He knew that his fate with Yi Xian was over, but it was a good thing that he completed the mission Yi Xian gave him. Moreover, with such an immortal-like figure overseeing the depths of the palace, it would be immeasurable for the small holy kingdom. On this day, Zhao Go issued an imperial edict, directly turning Yi Xian's palace into a forbidden area. Regardless of the royal family or his descendants, only death awaited those who dared to step into the forbidden area. A few officials and members of the royal family immediately broke out into discussion. They didn't know why Zhao Go wanted to create such a forbidden area, but they naturally didn't dare to ask since it was an imperial edict. Chapter 370. It wasn't until a member of the royal family admitted that he had a close relationship with Zhao Go and even had the merit of following the dragon that he stepped into Yi Xian's forbidden area while drunk. What happened next caused the officials to be extremely horrified. This member of the imperial family was torn apart by Zhao Go, and his clan was executed along with 9 generations of his family. His fate was extremely miserable. It was also because of this incident that the officials and members of the imperial family of the small holy kingdom knew that the forbidden area in the depths of the imperial palace must not be entered, or the only result would be death. The sea turned into mulberry fields, and the passage of time. 300 years passed in the blink of an eye. The iron-blooded Emperor Zhao Go had long been buried in the earth, and the one who succeeded him was his 7th son, Zhao Lin. Since ancient times, the imperial family has been the most ruthless. When Zhao Go died of old age in the mortal world, the heirs once again began a war for the throne. Zhao Lin was also an ambitious and ruthless character. During this war for the throne, he kept a low profile. At the most critical moment, he revealed his fangs and slaughtered the other princes in one fell swoop, smoothly becoming the new emperor of the small holy kingdom. The Imperial Garden. Zhao Lin, who had just ascended the throne, was flushed with success. Accompanied by the empress and many officials, he would occasionally admire the flowers and the koi fish in the pond. He had a sense of leisure and contentment. "Your Majesty, we can't go any further." Suddenly, when Zhao Lin reached the end of the Imperial Garden, an old courtier called out a timely reminder. Zhao Lin had just ascended the throne and was in high spirits. The words of this official immediately made him a little dissatisfied. He was the emperor of a kingdom, where in this small holy kingdom could he not go? Forbidden area? Zhao Lin frowned slightly and looked at the end of the Imperial Garden. He saw a palace looming in the clouds, giving off an extremely mysterious feeling. "Your Majesty, the late emperor once issued an imperial edict that no one is allowed to enter the forbidden area." Another official smiled flatteringly. "Humph, I want to see what is in the forbidden area that the late emperor attached so much importance to." Zhao Lin did not have any feelings towards this father of his. He still deeply remembered that when he was young, he had run to the edge of the forbidden grounds because he wanted to play, and had almost been killed by Zhao Go. If it was not for his mother's plea, he would have died in Zhao Go's hands when he was young. Moreover, Zhao Lin would never forget the way his imperial father, Zhao Go, looked at him. That pair of eyes were filled with killing intent. Even now, when he recalled it, it made him shudder. It was also because of this incident that he had been banished to the cold palace by Zhao Go at a young age. Although he had managed to keep his life, this incident was deeply engraved in his heart. Now that Zhao Go was dead and he had become the king of a small holy nation, he naturally wanted to see what was inside this forbidden area. Today, he seemed to be playing in the Imperial Garden, but his real purpose was to enter the forbidden area and see what was inside. Zhao Lin didn't say a word. His lips curled into a cold smile as he strode toward the forbidden area. This caused the expressions of the officials to change slightly, but they still quickly caught up to Zhao Lin. Very soon, Zhao Lin and the others arrived at the edge of the forbidden area, but the scene before them made them feel suffocated, and a silent fear spread in their hearts. A blood-red stone tablet was rooted at the edge of the forbidden area, and there were 8 large words inscribed on the stone tablet. "The forbidden area of the Zhao clan, trespassers shall die." The stone tablet was blood-red, and the words were bright. It was filled with an iron-blooded murderous aura, and it rushed toward Zhao Lin and the others. This is the previous emperor's handwriting," some of the officials exclaimed. Their eyes were slightly frozen as they looked at the blood-colored stone tablet. Evidently, when Zhao Go was alive, he was an iron-blooded monarch. Even though he had already passed away, he still gave off a silent, intimidating aura. Zhao Lin's face was slightly pale, but he still strode toward the forbidden area. This caused the officials and the empress to advise him not to do anything rash. Suddenly, when Zhao Lin's foot had just stepped into the forbidden area, his expression suddenly changed. Zhao Go's face appeared in his mind, and the memories of the past that he didn't want to recall came one after another. It was a summer in the Imperial Garden. Zhao Go was teaching the prince's martial skills, but when a eunuch hurriedly ran over and told the imperial father that the first prince had entered the forbidden area without permission, the imperial father's expression instantly turned icy cold. Zhao Lin would never forget that day. He saw Zhao Go enter the forbidden area with his own eyes, bring out his elder brother, and choke his elder brother to death in front of all the princes. Cold and merciless, killing his own son with his own hands. This extremely terrifying thing simply shattered Zhao Lin's courage, and it became the biggest shadow in his childhood. What shocked Zhao Lin the most was that Zhao Go had always been an immortal-like existence in his heart, and an indomitable monarch. But it was this iron-blooded monarch that was actually prostrating himself outside the forbidden grounds that day, constantly kowtowing and worshipping, as if he was asking for forgiveness from some kind of existence. Zhao Lin had never seen his imperial father so humble, and he saw something called fear in his imperial father's eyes. Even when his imperial father died of old age in the mortal world, Zhao Lin still couldn't understand what his imperial father, the iron-blooded great emperor, was afraid of. All the descendants of the Zhao clan are never allowed to step into the forbidden area unless they encounter a calamity that destroys the country. His imperial father Zhao Guo's last words faintly rang in his ears. Even when he was about to die, he didn't care who would inherit his throne. Instead, he had always instructed his descendants to never step into the forbidden area. Thinking back, Zhao Lin was drenched in cold sweat. In the end, he didn't dare to take that step. He slowly withdrew his foot, and then silently looked at the blood-red stone tablet. Death to those who enter the forbidden area of the Zhao clan? Zhao Lin murmured to himself, and then sighed. He didn't look at the forbidden area again, and returned to the imperial garden with his many courtiers. At the same time, Ao Lai nation's army was strong and powerful. Their army had entered the border, and millions of elite soldiers were charging towards the small holy nation. Because of Zhao Guo's death, the small holy nation was in chaos. Now was the best time to swallow up the small holy nation. Ao Lai, a large nation in the Dongxing divine continent, had countless cultivation sects, and was not something the small holy nation could compare to. Its current emperor received a decree from the various cultivation sects, and required Ao Lai to present many rare treasures. This also caused Ao Lai to set its sights on the small holy nation. In the blink of an eye, 300 years had passed. The 33rd Celestial Court. How many years had it been? Hundreds of thousands of years had passed, and no good news had happened in the Celestial Court. However, a piece of news shocked the immortals, caused an uproar in the three realms, and caused a great earthquake in the Celestial Court. The ruler of all things in the three realms, Jade Emperor Hao Tian. The ancient goddess, Moon Palace Master, Fairy of the Moon Palace, Chang Yi. These two people were completely unrelated to each other, yet they'd spread a piece of news that shocked the three dimensions. The Jade Emperor wanted to marry the Fairy of the Moon Palace as his wife, and he even sent out wedding invitations throughout the three realms. When such a ridiculous news spread, it was simply unbelievable. Whether it was the Tongtian Demon King, itinerant immortals, demons, or even bodhisattvas and Buddhas, they all received wedding invitations from the Celestial Court. When the rumor became true, it made the three realms speechless. The Fairy of the Moon Palace was the #1 fairy in the three realms. Countless immortals and gods adored her, but no one had ever received her favor. The three realms couldn't understand why the Fairy of the Moon Palace suddenly wanted to marry the Jade Emperor. The Celestial Court was in chaos, and the first person to cause trouble was the Queen Mother of the West. However, the Jade Emperor completely displayed his majesty when it came to the matter of the Fairy of the Moon Palace. No matter who it was, anyone who tried to dissuade him was suppressed by him. Be it the Chan School, Jia School, or the Western sects Mount Numinous, the Jade Emperor could be said to be incomparably domineering when it came to this matter. He didn't allow anyone to disobey him. The Queen Mother of the West fled to the Jade Pool, and a huge rift appeared between the couple. However, it couldn't change the Jade Emperor's mind. This was because the Jade Emperor had waited for too long. It had been hundreds of thousands of years. It could be said that it was his lifelong dream to make the Fairy of the Moon Palace his woman. While the three realms were discussing, the Fairy of the Moon Palace and the Jade Emperor sat opposite each other in the Celestial Court's Lingshao Hall. I hope you can keep your promise. Chang Yi, as long as you marry me, I will definitely not break my promise. You can rest assured. The short conversation between the two seemed to be a transaction. However, outsiders didn't know the content of the transaction. Chapter 371. Small Holy Nation, Town Hall. Zhao Lin sat on the throne while the officials stood on both sides of him. However, the atmosphere in the town hall was extremely heavy, and there was a silent fear slowly spreading in the hall. Report. A little eunuch rushed into the town hall in a panic, holding a blood-stained letter with both hands, and knelt in front of Zhao Lin. According to the battle report from the front line, Ao Lai's million-strong army has conquered half of the cities in the small holy nation. The 300,000 soldiers at the front line have all died, and we have no soldiers left. In less than 3 days, Ao Lai's million-strong army will invade the capital. Your Majesty, please make a decision quickly. Bang! Zhao Lin suddenly slammed the table, and his face was a little distorted. He quickly took the battle report from the front line and read it with a gloomy face. After dozens of breaths, Zhao Lin's body was trembling, and the battle report in his hand fell to the ground. His whole body went limp on the throne. Damn it, how dare Ao Lai, how dare they? Zhao Lin roared, but there was a look of despair in his eyes. It was no wonder that Zhao Lin was so agitated. He had just ascended the throne, and his beautiful life as an emperor had just begun. However, in the face of Ao Lai's million-strong army, he couldn't do anything at all. When Zhao Guo was still alive, he fought in the 10 Nations battlefield and was even given the title of Iron Blood Emperor. He was known as the tyrant of the generation, and wherever he went, he would leave nothing behind. Under Zhao Guo's leadership, the small holy nation had a strong army, and even Ao Lai didn't dare to be too presumptuous. However, after Zhao Guo's death, there was a great turmoil in the small holy nation. All the warlords were doing their own things, and the princes were fighting for the throne, which brought great turmoil to the small holy nation. At this moment, there were many things waiting to be done. The 300,000 soldiers at the front line had died, and Zhao Lin had no soldiers left. He was probably going to be the last emperor of the small holy nation, but this emperor was going to be a fallen emperor. Your Majesty, Ao Lai's million-strong army is bearing down on us. We have no choice but to give up on the capital city. Let's run for our lives, one of the officials said in a trembling voice. Your Majesty, where there's life, there's hope. Only by giving up the capital can we have a chance to make a comeback. Another official also advised in a trembling voice. Humans didn't want to die, let alone the ministers of a small holy kingdom. Everyone knew that the sun was setting on the minor saint kingdom. When the million-strong army arrived, this so-called minor saint kingdom would no longer exist in this world. Like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples, all sorts of persuading voices rang out, causing the entire discussion hall to become as noisy as a market. In this disaster, I hope your Majesty can preserve the last trace of the Zhao clan's bloodline. Empress Li begged sorrowfully. Annihilation of a country? The Zhao clan's bloodline? Suddenly, Zhao Lin murmured. His breathing froze at this moment because Empress Li's words reminded him of his father Zhao Guo's last words. All descendants of the Zhao clan will never step into the forbidden area unless it's a disaster. Zhao Lin was muttering to himself. A flush of red appeared on his face. His body was trembling at this moment. Under Empress Li's shocked gaze, he abruptly got up from the emperor's throne and ran towards the imperial garden as if he had gone mad. Quick, follow your Majesty! Empress Li shouted in panic. At the end of the imperial garden, the blood-red stone tablet was rooted here. The bloody words were very eye-catching. When Empress Li and the others arrived, they only saw Zhao Lin kneeling in front of the blood-red stone tablet. He was madly kowtowing towards the forbidden area. Junior Zhao Lin is the current ruler of the Little Holy Empire. Ao Lai's millions of soldiers are pressing on our borders. Our Little Holy Empire is facing a disaster. If there really is a secret of the Zhao clan in the forbidden area, Zhao Lin seemed to have fallen into madness. He kept saying something to the forbidden area. He kept kowtowing, but he didn't get any response. Your Majesty! Looking at Zhao Lin's bleeding forehead, Empress Li couldn't bear it. She quickly walked to Zhao Lin and said, Your Majesty, get up quickly. If there really is a secret of the Little Holy Empire in the forbidden area, my father would have told his descendants before he died. Chapter 372. No, it must be wrong. There must be a master in the forbidden area. Although father didn't say it, I can't forget the look in his eyes. I will never forget it. Zhao Lin said to himself crazily. Father was very scared. That was a look of awe. I have never seen father so panicked. Suddenly, Zhao Lin grabbed Empress Li's shoulder and shook it. Do you know that back then, the first prince accidentally trespassed into the forbidden grounds and imperial father strangled the first prince to death? The eldest prince? He was father's most beloved son, but father killed him with his own hands. Killed him? Zhao Lin said to himself crazily. He fell into a silent fear, as if he was recalling the scene of the past. His body trembled slightly. But what does this have to do with your majesty? Empress Li knew about this, but she didn't understand why Zhao Lin would mention it again. How can this have nothing to do with me? Because I was the one who lured the eldest prince into the forbidden area. Zhao Lin smiled bitterly, which made Empress Li's expression change. She didn't expect Zhao Lin to do such a despicable thing. It's all in the past. Your Majesty, don't mention it again. Empress Li held Zhao Lin in her arms and tried to soften her voice as much as possible to comfort Zhao Lin. No, I must mention it. Back then, after royal father killed the first prince, he knelt here just like he is now, as if he was apologizing to someone. At that time, I knew that there must be an extraordinary person in this forbidden area. Zhao Lin's lips were pale, and his voice was extremely certain. Zhao Lin said a lot of secrets that day, which made Empress Li tremble with fear. But now, none of this was important, because in 3 days, the small holy empire would cease to exist. The sun set and night fell. Zhao Lin finally retreated, because no matter how much he begged the existence in the forbidden area, he didn't get any response. 3 days later, the country was destroyed, and the cries shook the sky. The gate of the small holy empire was broken, and millions of soldiers marched in. Countless people died in the city, and a large number of Ao Lai's soldiers burned, killed, and looted, causing the entire capital to fall into a bloody storm. Imperial Palace. The great general of Ao Lai country led an army of 30,000 and charged straight in. Every time he slashed out, he would take away a large number of lives. When he saw the beautiful palace maids and concubines, he would capture them and enjoy them after the battle ended. Bang! The palace door was blown to smithereens, and General Ao Lai strode in. However, the scene that greeted him left him stunned. Then, a cruel smile appeared on his face. Zhao Lin, I thought you had already escaped. I didn't expect you to still have the spirit of a king and still stay in the palace. General Ao Lai sneered. On the emperor's throne, Zhao Lin was wearing the emperor's robe with 9 dragons. There wasn't any fear on his face. He looked at General Ao Lai calmly. I am the son of heaven. Even if I become the ruler of a fallen country, I will live and die with my country, Zhao Lin said in a dignified voice. Huh. General Ao Lai laughed contemptuously. Then, he looked around and said, your so-called dignity is nothing but bullshit in my eyes. Today, not only will you die, but everyone in your Zhao clan will die as well. Li Guang, you are the general of Ao Lai country. I have heard that you have killed countless people. Wherever you go, you leave nothing behind. Since you want to exterminate my Zhao clan, then follow me. Zhao Lin got up from the emperor's throne and walked towards the imperial garden. Li Guang smiled coldly. He wasn't afraid of Zhao Lin playing any tricks because the entire capital was surrounded by his million-strong army. No one could save the lives of the Zhao clan. At the end of the imperial garden, the blood-red stone tablet was extremely eye-catching. All the members of the Zhao clan were sitting cross-legged on both sides of the stone tablet. When Zhao Lin walked in front of his clansmen, he looked into the depths of the forbidden area with a last glimmer of hope. Zhao Lin knew that he had reached a dead end. Right now, only the existence of this forbidden land might be able to turn the tide. This was also the reason why he had gathered the descendants of his clan here. Zhao Lin, I don't care what tricks you want to play. Today, you and your clansmen will die here. Li Guang naturally saw the blood-colored stone tablet. However, he didn't have any fear in his heart. He unsheathed the steel sword in his hand and led many soldiers to surround Zhao Lin and the others. Bang! Suddenly, Zhao Lin knelt in front of the blood-colored stone tablet. His voice was sorrowful and desperate as he said, "Senior, please save the lives of my Zhao clan. Today, no one can save you." Li Guang smiled coldly and slashed at Zhao Lin with his sword. This also made the Zhao clan cry out in alarm. Zhao Lin clenched his fists and stared at the depths of the forbidden area. However, there was a flash of despair in his eyes. Was there really no expert in the forbidden area? Was everything just his own conjecture? The chill of the steel sword made Zhao Lin's hair stand on end. This also made him smile bitterly in despair. He could only close his eyes and wait for death. Buzz! Time seemed to have stopped and space seemed to have frozen. This part of the world suddenly stagnated. There was even a gust of wind that blew through the world and blew away the clouds in the depths of the forbidden area. A slender figure slowly walked out of the fog. There was no power around him, nor was there any aura. However, when he opened and closed his eyes, it was as if the stars in the sky were rotating in his eyes. Tap, tap, tap. It was as if thunder from the ninth heaven exploded, as if the waves of the vast ocean were attacking. Yi Xian's eyes frowned slightly. There was only indifference and ruthlessness in his eyes. However, with every step he took, the world in all directions was distorted to the extreme. It was as if it would collapse at any time. This is the existence that Father is afraid of? When Zhao Lin saw Yi Xian walk out of the forbidden area, he was completely stunned. However, his body kept trembling because he knew that their Zhao clan might be saved. Not only Zhao Lin, but the other members of the Zhao clan also looked at Yi Xian in a daze. They did not know what relationship Yi Xian had with their Zhao clan. Who are you? Li Guang's body was tensed up. He even seemed to be fierce as he roared at Yi Xian. This was because this person who suddenly appeared gave him a sense of death, which made him faintly unable to breathe. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not have the slightest intention to pay attention to a weak mortal like Li Guang. His eyes narrowed slightly and an extremely terrifying thing happened. Bang! The void collapsed and everything was destroyed. Li Guang did not even have the time to scream before he was directly turned into ashes and no longer existed in this world. It was not just Li Guang. The tens of thousands of soldiers in Ao Lai shattered like sand. They were all turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. This caused the world to become deathly silent. Zhao Lin sat paralyzed on the ground as if he had been struck dumb. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have dared to believe what he had just seen. An army of tens of thousands had been turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. This was simply something that only an immortal could do. It was also at this moment that Zhao Lin finally understood why Father had listed this place as a forbidden area. He also understood why Father had personally killed the first prince. He was afraid of angering the existence in this forbidden area. "You're Zhao Gou's son." Yi Xian looked indifferently at Zhao Lin. His voice was very calm. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Zhao Lin immediately returned to his senses and knelt down to kowtow. Junior Zhao Lin is Father's seventh son. I kowtow to Senior. Where is Zhao Gou? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Father has already passed away. However, before he died, he instructed us descendants not to disturb Senior's cultivation. Today, the Zhao clan is facing a great calamity. I hope that Senior can help our little saint nation out of this calamity for the sake of Father's sake. Zhao Lin's voice trembled as he kowtowed to Yi Xian. Yi Xian nodded when he heard Zhao Lin's words. He was not too surprised. After all, 300 years had passed. It was not strange that Zhao Gou had died of old age in the mortal world. Very well. Back then, your father could be considered to be fated with me. He even helped me find many materials to set up a formation. Today, I will return the favor. Yi Xian said calmly and stepped into the sky. However, Zhao Lin's anxious voice came from behind him. Senior, the capital is now surrounded by Ao Lai's army of millions. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not stop. When he appeared again, he was already sitting cross-legged in the sky. Above the firmament, in the void, a spot of immortal light bloomed in Yi Xian's hand. He looked down at the capital city with a ruthless look in his eyes. Kill! The moment he spoke, the immortal light shook the sky. A great immortal spell came down and covered the entire capital city. A scene of a sea of blood appeared. Rumble! The bodies of Ao Lai's army of millions crumbled inch by inch under the annihilation of the immortal light. A bloody mist covered the sky and earth. Miserable cries could be heard. Helpless cries and pleas could be heard everywhere. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not have the slightest bit of pity. He sat cross-legged in the sky and looked down indifferently at the millions of soldiers who died tragically in the capital city of the little saint nation. The lives of mortals are too fragile. Yi Xian shook his head slowly and sighed. What kind of monster dares to slaughter the living beings of the mortal world? Suddenly, a dignified and angry voice came from the heavens and earth, causing the world to rumble and shake. The immortal light of immortal light filled the sky and an unimaginably terrifying pressure pressed down on Yi Xian. Daluo Jingxian. Yi Xian's expression slightly changed as his eyes darkened. He never would have thought that after going into seclusion for 300 years to refine the immortal defying diagram, he would actually encounter a great golden immortal the moment he came out of seclusion. Purple energy spread out for 30,000 kilometers, and the great Luo immortal light covered the sky and the earth. As the endless heavens and earth shook, a young man in a purple imperial robe traversed 1,000,000 kilometers through the sky towards Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian rose from the void and looked at the newcomer with his hands behind his back. His voice was cold and sinister. Chapter 373. There was a difference between mortals and immortals. To Yi Xian, if he wanted to kill someone, be it an immortal or a mortal, they would all die at his hands. There was no such thing as pity or benevolence, because this was how he had progressed since his youth. He had always believed in the principle that the strong were respected and the weak were treated like dogs. In the blink of an eye, the million-strong army of Ao Lai had been annihilated. Amidst the bloody mist that filled the air, the angry howls of vengeful spirits could be heard. This was proof of how much slaughter Yi Xian had committed. However, the heavens were benevolent. When a Daluo Jingxian passed by and discovered that Yi Xian had committed such a deranged act, the Daluo Jingxian was enraged and headed straight for Yi Xian from 1,000,000 miles away. Fearless and unperturbed, Yi Xian would have fled without a word 300 years ago. But now, he had just finished refining a new immortal defying formation. This was his trump card against the Daluo Jingxian, so how could he flee without a fight? Rumble. Thousands of strands of auspicious qi, immortal light rippled, and violet qi spread for 30,000 miles. A young man in purple imperial robes stepped through the air. The immortal light of the great firmament rippling around him made him seem even more noble and extraordinary. Just the aura he exuded was enough to make others feel inferior. Insolent immortal, how dare you harm mortals? Why don't you quickly surrender? The young man in purple had his hands behind his back. His starry robes fluttered slightly, and a heaven-like pressure pressed down on Yi Xian. I'm asking who you are. Didn't you hear me? Yi Xian's eyes were malicious and his voice was cold. A sinister glint flashed through his eyes as he looked at the young man. Daluo Jingxian was absolutely not a nobody, and he was a great figure in the 3 dimensions. Even though Yi Xian had never met him, he'd faintly guessed his identity. She wore a violet imperial robe and was surrounded by the energy of stars. Moreover, she spoke in a dignified and graceful manner. In the entire 3 dimensions, only the legendary imperial monarch Ziwei could compare to her. The 3 great celestial emperors of the celestial court were Emperor Zhenwu, Emperor Go-Chen, and Emperor Ziwei. Together with the East Pole Emperor, who rose to power later, they were known as the 4 celestial emperors of the celestial court. Of course, even though he had an undeserved reputation as the East End imperial monarch, he didn't possess the strength to match an imperial monarch, and this was something that had always been criticized by all the living beings in the three dimensions. However, Yi Xian had never imagined that he would encounter the legendary imperial monarch Ziwei as soon as he came out of seclusion. This was too much of a coincidence. I'm Ziwei. Who are you? Emperor Ziwei spoke in a dignified manner, but a wisp of surprise flashed through his eyes when he looked at Yi Xian. After all, he was one of the three great imperial monarchs of the celestial court, and he himself was the Daluo Jingxian. He was revered by all the living beings in the three dimensions. Regardless of whether it was a demon king or an immortal, all of them would bow and scrape before him. However, the black-robed man before him had overturned his understanding. The Daluo Jingxian was clearly just an overarching heaven golden immortal, but he didn't show any fear when facing him. Instead, he looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze. This made Emperor Ziwei wonder who Yi Xian was. However, no matter how hard Emperor Ziwei thought, he couldn't recall Yi Xian from the three dimensions. What made Emperor Ziwei feel the most apprehensive was that he actually felt a sense of dread when facing Yi Xian. This was the reason why he didn't attack directly. Emperor Ziwei. It's really you. Yi Xian nodded slowly, finally confirming the other party's identity. Immortal, you have no manners. First, you slaughtered innocent people in the mortal world. Then, you didn't even greet me when you saw me. Perhaps I'll teach you a lesson today. Emperor Ziwei said sternly. Although he had an indescribable fear for Yi Xian, the Daluo Jingxian was the Daluo Jingxian after all. Yi Xian was just an overarching heaven golden immortal. How could he be a match for him? Teach me a lesson. Yi Xian smiled. He really did smile. However, his smile was extremely strange, and a trace of coldness flashed through his eyes. The way he looked at Empress Myrtle Star was as if he was looking at a strange object that he was delighted to hunt. It was no wonder that Yi Xian reacted this way. He had just refined a new inverse immortal array diagram and wanted to find a Daluo Jingxian to test the power of the inverse immortal array diagram. At this moment, Emperor Ziwei was meddling in other people's business, which was exactly what he wanted. Ziwei, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but you can't teach me a lesson. Yi Xian smiled contemptuously. The overarching heaven golden light rippled out and the inverse immortal array diagram quietly appeared in his palm. He looked at Emperor Ziwei with a hint of provocation in his eyes. How dare you? Even a clay figurine would have a bit of anger, let alone Empress Myrtle Star. When he saw Yi Xian's provocative expression, Empress Myrtle Star was enraged. Seal! A speck of Daluo immortal light streaked across the sky and tore apart the starry sky. It transformed into a giant finger of immortal light that stretched across the sky. When the finger of immortal light descended on Yi Xian, the entire world seemed to be faintly collapsing. Its terrifying power was simply unbearable to look directly at. Those who obey are immortals, those who defy are mortals. Immortals and mortals are separated by a single thought. Defy. Yi Xian smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, he struck out with the inverse immortal array diagram. Something extremely strange and terrifying happened. Bang! 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 The 8 gates of life and death, the universe and all phenomena. The 8 gates of starlight spread across the luminous sky. The sky cracked open and the void shattered. Billions of rays of starlight descended from the luminous sky and covered the entire world. Bang! There was a deafening explosion that shattered the past and present. The giant finger of immortal light that Celestial Emperor Ziwei had unleashed was instantly reduced to nothingness. Even the spiritual energy in the boundless world had become extremely violent and filled with an extremely bizarre power of laws. What formation is this? My cultivation state, how could my cultivation state? Within the inverse immortal array diagram, Emperor Ziwei could feel his cultivation state slipping away continuously. To think that Daluo Jinxian's cultivation state would be regressing. This was something that had him absolutely terrified. He could not have imagined that something as horrifying as this could happen. This is the mountain river map of Queen Nuwa? No, this isn't the mountain river map. Ziwei Heaven and Earth screamed out in fear. However, the gaze he used to look at the inverse immortal array diagram with was one of extreme horror. Above the heavens, in the void, Yi Xian strode over slowly. His expression was calm and indifferent as his hoarse voice reverberated through the entire world. The 8 gates of life and death, the universe and all phenomena. Heaven and earth reverse, turning immortals into mortals. This is the inverse immortal array diagram. It was created by a friend of mine. Now that it has reappeared in the 3 realms, it is your fortune to be able to experience the might of the inverse immortal array diagram for yourself. Inverse immortal array diagram? Emperor Ziwei Heaven and Earth mumbled to himself as he tried to recall if there was such a formation in the 3 realms. However, no matter how hard Emperor Ziwei Heaven and Earth tried to recall, he had never heard of any inverse immortal array diagram in the 3 realms. The 12 heavenly demon gods formation, immortal slaying formation, 9 Ben's Yellow River formation, 10,000 immortals formation. He had heard of all the famous formations in the 3 realms. However, he had never seen such a strange formation before. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.